Welcome, intrepid explorers and seekers of untold truths, to a journey that transcends the boundaries of ordinary history and plunges deep into the heart of humanity's most enduring sagas. Prepare to be swept away on a thrilling expedition through the mists of time, where the echoes of ancient battles still resonate and the spirits of legendary champions whisper their enigmatic tales. In this captivating voyage, we're not just recounting stories, we're unraveling the very fabric of heroism, exploring the blurred lines between fact and folklore, and confronting the mysteries that have captivated humanity for centuries. This is more than a simple historical retrospective. It is a deep dive into the extraordinary, an exploration of the incredible human capacity for courage, invention, and myth-making. Today, we embark on an unparalleled adventure into the heart of what we call the 30 enigmatic myths of timeless warriors. Imagine stepping onto ancient battlefields, hearing the clang of steel, and feeling the primal roar of warriors whose names have been etched into the annals of time, not just as historical figures, but as titans whose very existence seems to defy explanation. We'll delve into the shadowy figures whose deeds are so grand, so unbelievable, that they've become woven into the very fabric of our collective consciousness, sometimes appearing more divine than mortal. These aren't just fables, they are intricate tapestries of human aspiration, fear, and triumph, each thread holding a piece of a larger, profound truth about the human spirit and our endless quest for meaning and glory. We'll examine the astonishing feats that seem to defy the laws of nature, the epic battles that reshaped empires, and the supernatural powers attributed to those who walked the earth like gods. As we peel back the layers of legend and scrutinize the evidence, we'll ask profound questions. What raw human spirit drove these individuals to such extraordinary lengths? Were they truly imbued with supernatural gifts, or did their sheer will and unparalleled skill elevate them beyond their mortal peers? What secrets do their myths still guard, mysteries that continue to intrigue and mystify us even in our modern age? Join us as we shine a light into the forgotten corners of history, where valor intertwines with the unknown and bravery dances with the enigmatic. By the end of our journey, you will not only know the stories of these timeless warriors, but also understand the profound impact their legacies continue to have on our world. Let's unlock the truths and uncover the fictions behind these incredible sagas. As we begin our exploration of these timeless warriors, we must first turn our attention to one of the most fascinating and foundational concepts of medieval heroism, the 9 worthies. Imagine a world where the greatest heroes from across history and legend were brought together, not just as individual champions, but as a defined group, serving as the ultimate standard of chivalry and martial prowess. This is precisely what the concept of the 9 worthies represented. It wasn't just a casual collection of heroes, it was a carefully curated pantheon designed to inspire and educate the knightly class of the late medieval period. These figures were seen as exemplars of valor, wisdom, and moral rectitude, embodying the peak of human achievement in warfare and leadership. This idea of the 9 worthies truly blossomed in the late medieval era, particularly around the 14th century. It was a time when the ideals of knighthood were being formalized and celebrated, and a framework was needed to showcase the pinnacle of these virtues. The worthies were chosen not for their contemporary relevance, but for their timeless appeal and the universality of their heroic deeds. They served as a bridge between the ancient world, biblical narratives, and the emerging Christian European identity, demonstrating that heroism transcended specific cultures or time periods. Their stories were woven into tapestries, painted in illuminated manuscripts, and recited in epic poems, becoming a ubiquitous part of the cultural landscape. These artistic depictions weren't just decorative, they were visual textbooks reinforcing the virtues these heroes personified. They showed knights and nobles what aspiring to greatness truly meant, providing a tangible set of role models to emulate, not just in battle but in character. The selection of these 9 figures was meticulously balanced, representing a broad spectrum of human experience and spiritual traditions. The group was divided into 3 distinct triads: 3 heathens or pagans, 3 Jews, and 3 Christians. From the pagan world came Hector, the valiant Trojan prince whose courage in defending his city was unparalleled; Alexander the Great, the Macedonian king who conquered an empire stretching from Greece to India; and Julius Caesar, the Roman general and statesman whose military genius and political acumen reshaped the ancient world. Their inclusion highlighted that heroism was not exclusive to one faith or culture, drawing from the classical antiquity that so fascinated medieval scholars. Then, from the Jewish tradition, we have Joshua, the successor to Moses, who fearlessly led the Israelites into the Promised Land and achieved miraculous victories; David, the shepherd boy who became king, renowned for his defeat of Goliath and his strategic military prowess; and Judas Maccabeus, the Jewish warrior who led a successful revolt against the Seleucid Empire, championing freedom and self-determination. These figures brought a scriptural dimension to the concept, linking knightly valor to divine will and righteous struggle. Finally, the Christian triad brought the tradition closer to home for medieval European audiences. King Arthur, the legendary British monarch, symbol of chivalry, justice, and the quest for the Holy Grail; Charlemagne, the Frankish king who unified much of Western Europe and was crowned Holy Roman Emperor, representing the fusion of political power and Christian faith; and Godfrey of Bouillon, one of the leaders of the First Crusade, who became the first ruler of the Kingdom of Jerusalem, embodying the ultimate Christian warrior fighting for a sacred cause. Together, these 9 worthies formed a grand narrative of human potential, a testament to the enduring power of courage, leadership, and unwavering conviction, setting the stage for the individual myths we will explore. Now that we've set the stage with the 9 worthies, it's time to zero in on one of their most iconic and enduring figures, King Arthur. His name alone conjures images of chivalry, round tables, and epic quests, yet the truth behind this legendary monarch is perhaps one of the greatest historical mysteries we still grapple with. Was Arthur a real warlord battling Saxon invaders with a shining sword, or simply the magnificent product of centuries of storytelling? This question lies at the very heart of his enigmatic appeal, blurring the lines between historical fact and captivating myth. To truly understand the enigma of King Arthur, we must first consider the historical landscape of early post-Roman Britain, a chaotic and violent period often referred to as the Dark Ages. When the Roman legions withdrew in the early 5th century, they left behind a power vacuum, a land vulnerable to incursions from various Germanic tribes, most notably the Saxons. This was a time of immense upheaval where local chieftains and warlords rose and fell, constantly struggling for control and survival. In such an era, the need for a strong, unifying leader capable of defending the Britons against these relentless invaders would have been paramount, a desperate longing for a hero. It is precisely this intense need that many historians believe provided fertile ground for the seeds of the Arthurian legend to take root and flourish. The idea of a powerful, just king who could rally the disparate British forces against a common enemy was not just a comforting thought. It was a societal imperative, turning an ideal into a mythical figure. Our earliest hints of an Arthur-like figure come from surprisingly sparse historical records. These are not grand chronicles, but rather brief mentions in early Welsh texts, often poetic or annalistic in nature. One of the most significant is the Historia Brittonum, traditionally attributed to a 9th century monk named Nennius. This text lists a series of 12 battles fought by a leader named Arthur, culminating in the Battle of Badon Hill, where he supposedly achieved a great victory. Another crucial source is the Annals Cambriae, or Welsh Annals, which also mention Arthur and the Battle of Badon, dating it to around 516. These early accounts paint a picture of a formidable warrior, a successful military commander, but they don't give us the detailed, romanticized figure we recognize today. There's no mention of Merlin, Excalibur, Camelot, or the Knights of the Round Table. These texts are tantalizingly brief, offering glimpses of a potential historical figure, but leaving much to the imagination and later embellishment. They are like faint echoes across time, suggesting a powerful presence without fully revealing its form. The Arthur we are most familiar with, the noble king surrounded by valiant knights and mystical elements, largely emerges from the fertile imagination of Geoffrey of Monmouth in his 12th century masterpiece, Historia Regum Britanniae, or History of the Kings of Britain. Geoffrey's work, while presented as history, was in fact a vibrant blend of existing Welsh traditions, folklore, and his own creative genius. He took the scattered references to Arthur and wove them into a coherent, compelling narrative, complete with a detailed genealogy, dramatic battles, and a full cast of now legendary characters like Merlin, Guinevere, and Lancelot. Geoffrey's intention wasn't necessarily historical accuracy, but rather to provide Britain with a glorious past, a national hero on par with heroes from other European nations. His book was an instant sensation, spreading rapidly across Europe and inspiring countless retellings and adaptations. It was Geoffrey who truly established the core elements of the Arthurian mythos, shaping the legend into the form that would captivate generations. So, was King Arthur real? The honest answer is that we simply don't know for certain. The archaeological evidence is inconclusive, and the textual evidence is either too sparse for definitive proof or too legendary to be taken at face value. However, the enduring power of his story suggests something profound. Whether he was a single historical warlord whose deeds were magnified over time, a composite of several lesser-known leaders, or purely a mythical construct born from the hopes and fears of a troubled age, Arthur embodies a timeless ideal. He represents the yearning for a just ruler, a champion who stands against overwhelming odds, a beacon of hope in times of darkness. The sites associated with him, like the dramatic cliffs of Tintagel Castle in Cornwall, said to be his birthplace, or the mystical Glastonbury Tor in Somerset, often linked to Avalon, only amplify this sense of ancient mystery. These locations feel imbued with his legend, even if concrete historical evidence remains elusive. The myth of King Arthur, in all its grandeur and enigma, continues to resonate because it speaks to a universal human desire for heroism, order, and a better world, making him not just a figure of the past but a timeless inspiration for the future. From the chivalric courts of medieval Europe, we now journey eastward to the tumultuous landscapes of feudal Japan, a land steeped in honor, warfare, and the disciplined art of the sword. Here, we encounter another enigmatic figure whose name is synonymous with martial prowess and philosophical depth, Miyamoto Musashi. Revered as Japan's greatest swordsman, Musashi's legend is built on an astounding claim. An undefeated record in over 60 duels, a feat that, if true, defies belief and solidifies his place as a true master of the blade. But like King Arthur, we must ask, how much of Musashi's incredible story is verifiable history, and how much is the masterful embellishment of myth carefully crafted over centuries? Musashi's life story is as much a chronicle of a wandering Ronin as it is a testament to his unmatched skill. Born in the late 16th century, a period of intense civil strife and constant warfare in Japan, Musashi emerged from the chaos as a solitary figure, seemingly unattached to any lord or domain for much of his life. His early years are shrouded in a bit of mystery, but what is undeniable is his early introduction to the sword. He claimed to have fought his first duel at the tender age of 13, killing his opponent. This wasn't some minor scuffle, it was a life-or-death encounter that set the stage for a lifetime of combat. Throughout his youth and early adulthood, he honed his skills through countless challenges, traveling the breadth of Japan, engaging in duels against renowned swordsmen from various schools. His reputation grew with each victory, painting a picture of a relentless warrior, always seeking to test his limits against the best of his time. The sheer volume of his duels and his consistent triumphs against a wide array of opponents, some armed with different weapons or fighting styles, suggests a martial genius, a man who understood not just the mechanics of the sword but the psychology of combat. Perhaps the most iconic element of Musashi's fighting style, and one that is deeply woven into his legend, is his development of the Nieten Ikai Ryu, or two heavens as one style, which famously involved wielding a long sword katana and a short sword wakizashi simultaneously. This was revolutionary for its time, as most swordsmen favored a single blade or used the second sword only as a backup. Musashi's innovative approach wasn't just a gimmick, it was a strategic revelation, allowing him to adapt to various opponents and situations, using the combination of weapons to create openings, parry attacks, and deliver devastating blows. His most famous duel against Sasaki Kojiro, often depicted in vivid ukiyo-e prints, is the quintessential example of his unconventional brilliance. Kojiro, known for his exceptionally long sword and precise technique, was said to be defeated by Musashi, who arrived late to the duel armed with only a wooden oar he had carved into a makeshift sword, demonstrating not just his physical prowess but his cunning and psychological warfare. This duel, more than any other, has cemented his image as the ultimate, unbeatable swordsman, a figure whose ingenuity was as sharp as his blade. Beyond the duels and the innovative sword techniques, Musashi left behind a profound philosophical legacy in his treatise, the Book of Five Rings, Go-Rin no Sho. Written in the final years of his life, this book is not just a manual on swordsmanship. It's a comprehensive guide to strategy, self-mastery, and the principles of conflict applicable to all aspects of life. Musashi's philosophy emphasizes intuition over rigid technique, adaptability over rote memorization, and a deep understanding of rhythm and timing. He discusses the way of strategy as not merely about winning individual battles, but about understanding the flow of life and mastering oneself. He wrote about the importance of perceiving the gap or emptiness in an opponent's defense, both physically and mentally, and how to exploit it. This philosophical depth elevates Musashi from a mere brawler to a profound thinker, suggesting that his victories weren't just due to brute force but a sophisticated understanding of human nature and the dynamics of confrontation. So, how much of Musashi's story is historical fact, and how much is the rich tapestry of myth? While the existence of Miyamoto Musashi is well documented, unlike the more elusive King Arthur, the details of his more than 60 duels and his undefeated record are harder to verify with absolute certainty. Some historians suggest that the number might be an exaggeration or that some duels were less formal than often portrayed. However, the consistent accounts of his skill and his impact on Japanese martial arts are undeniable. His wandering, solitary lifestyle, often depicted in ancient Japanese scrolls, aligns with the historical realities of Ronin in that era, and his Book of Five Rings provides compelling insight into his mind and methods. Ultimately, Musashi stands as a powerful example of a historical figure whose authentic achievements were so extraordinary that they naturally lent themselves to legendary embellishment. He represents the pinnacle of martial art refined into a way of life, a warrior whose actions and philosophies continue to inspire and intrigue, blurring the lines between a supreme swordsman and a master storyteller of his own life's incredible journey. From the celebrated warrior philosopher Musashi, we pivot now to a figure whose very name conjures whispers of stealth, shadow, and superhuman ability, Hattori Hanzo. Known historically as the Ghost of the Iga, Hanzo is arguably the most famous ninja in Japanese history, a name synonymous with espionage, tactical brilliance, and almost supernatural disappearing acts. Yet his story, much like Arthur's and Musashi's, is a fascinating blend of documented historical deeds and wildly imaginative folklore, making it challenging to separate the formidable samurai from the mythical master of illusion. Hattori Hanzo was born in the year 1542 into a family of lesser samurai who served the Matsudaira clan, later known as the Tokugawa clan. Unlike the common portrayal of ninja as peasant spies or assassins, Hanzo was a high-ranking samurai, a respected commander of Iga province warriors, a group renowned for their unique martial and espionage skills. His early life was steeped in martial arts training, including swordsmanship, spear fighting, and tactics. He earned his first distinction at the age of 16 when he participated in a night attack on Udo Castle in Mikawa province, demonstrating early on his prowess in stealth movements and unconventional warfare. This was not the work of a shadowy assassin, but a disciplined warrior using specialized techniques in battle. He quickly gained a reputation for fearlessness and efficiency on the battlefield, becoming an indispensable asset to his lord, Tokugawa Ieyasu, during the turbulent Sengoku period. Hanzo's historical contributions to Tokugawa Ieyasu's rise to power are undeniable and far more grounded in reality than the later myths suggest. His most famous historical exploit occurred in the year 1582, following the assassination of Oda Nobunaga, Ieyasu's powerful ally, at the Honnoji Temple. Stranded far from his home base and surrounded by enemy forces, Ieyasu was in grave danger. It was Hanzo who orchestrated Ieyasu's perilous escape, guiding him and his small retinue through the treacherous Iga Mountains territory that Hanzo and his Iga warriors knew intimately. This daring feat, known as the Iga-go or crossing of Iga, involved navigating through hostile lands with speed and stealth, relying on the local knowledge and guerrilla tactics of the Iga clan. Without Hanzo's strategic brilliance and the loyalty of his men, Ieyasu's life and his subsequent path to becoming shogun would likely have ended there. Hanzo's ability to secure safe passage through enemy territory, using covert routes and swift movements, solidified his reputation not as a sorcerer, but as a master tactician and loyal servant. The legend of Hattori Hanzo, however, quickly transcended his historical feats, evolving into the superhuman ninja figure we often see in popular culture. Tales began to circulate attributing him with an array of magical powers, the ability to disappear and reappear at will, to control minds, to conjure illusions, and even to predict the future. He was said to be able to jump incredible heights, walk through walls, and master the art of disguise so perfectly that he was utterly undetectable. These mythical elements were likely fueled by a combination of factors: the genuine, albeit less dramatic, stealth abilities of the Iga warriors, the fear and awe inspired by their unconventional tactics, and the natural tendency for heroic tales to grow in the retelling. The term ninja itself was not widely used during Hanzo's time, and the romanticized image of the black-clad, silent assassin is largely a product of later Edo period fiction and 20th century media. The historical Hanzo was more likely to be found on a battlefield leading troops or orchestrating strategic movements than silently scaling castle walls in the dead of night. The true enigma of Hattori Hanzo lies in this powerful duality: the verifiable samurai general whose loyalty and tactical acumen were crucial to the foundation of the Tokugawa shogunate, and the spectral ninja master whose fantastical abilities continue to captivate imaginations. His name, specifically Hattori Hanzo Masanari, is now almost universally recognized as the quintessential ninja despite the historical discrepancies. This transformation from a skilled warrior to a legendary figure of supernatural stealth serves as a compelling example of how cultural narratives can shape and elevate historical personalities, turning exceptional human skill into something truly mythical. His legend speaks to a deeper human fascination with the unseen, the mysterious, and the seemingly impossible. From the shadowed valleys of feudal Japan, we now cast our gaze further back in time, to the sun-drenched landscapes and epic sagas of ancient Greece, where whispers of a formidable tribe of warrior women echo through the ages. We're talking, of course, about the Amazons, a name that conjures images of fierce independence, unparalleled martial skill, and a society built entirely around female strength. The myth of these legendary women has captivated imaginations for millennia, raising a fundamental question that continues to intrigue historians and archaeologists alike. Were the Amazons merely a powerful figment of the Greek imagination, a cautionary tale or an aspirational ideal, or did their legends spring from a kernel of historical truth, perhaps inspired by real-life warrior women? Roamed the vast steppes of Eurasia, the origins of the Amazon myth are deeply rooted in Greek mythology, appearing in some of the oldest and most celebrated tales. They are consistently depicted as a nation of formidable female warriors, skilled archers, devastating cavalry, and fearless combatants who lived independently, segregated from men. Various Greek myths place their homeland in diverse locations, often around the Black Sea region, particularly Themyscira on the Thermodon River, embodying a sense of exotic otherness. Their very existence challenged the patriarchal norms of ancient Greek society, where women were largely confined to domestic roles. This contrast made the Amazons both terrifying and fascinating, a powerful other that defied conventional gender roles and represented an untamed, wild female power. For the Greeks, the Amazons served multiple narrative purposes. They were formidable adversaries whose defeat glorified Greek heroes. They represented the chaos of a world turned upside down, and perhaps subtly, they hinted at a societal anxiety about female agency and independence. Throughout Greek mythology, the Amazons engaged in epic confrontations with some of the most celebrated male heroes, battles that solidified their fearsome reputation. Hercules, as part of his 12 labors, was tasked with obtaining the girdle of Hippolyta, the Amazon queen. This encounter, often depicted in ancient art, portrays a fierce struggle that Hercules ultimately won, but not without acknowledging the Amazons' incredible strength and prowess. Even more famously, the Amazons fought alongside the Trojans against the Achaeans in the Trojan War, led by their queen Penthesilea. Her duel with Achilles is a legendary face-off where she met her end at the hands of the greatest Greek warrior, yet even in defeat, her bravery and skill commanded respect and even admiration from her slayer. These mythical battles weren't just about showing the strength of Greek heroes. They were also about defining the boundaries of their world, showcasing the kind of extraordinary adversaries who could push even the gods' favored heroes to their limits. While the fantastical elements of the Amazon myth, such as their self-amputation of a breast to better draw a bow, a detail now largely dismissed by scholars, are clearly mythological, archaeological discoveries in recent decades have provided tantalizing evidence that might suggest a historical basis for these legends. The focus of this evidence centers on the Scythians and Sarmatians, nomadic peoples who inhabited the Eurasian steppes from roughly the 8th century BC to the 4th century CE. Archaeological excavations of kurgans or burial mounds in regions like Ukraine, southern Russia, and Kazakhstan have unearthed the remains of numerous warrior women buried with their weapons, bows and arrows, daggers, spears, and even swords. These women exhibit signs of robust physical activity and often display battle-related injuries. One notable discovery was a kurgan in Kazakhstan containing the remains of a woman buried with a full array of weapons, including a bronze mirror and other personal items, strongly suggesting she was not just a camp follower but an active participant in warfare. These finds align remarkably well with Greek descriptions of the Amazons' fighting style and their presumed territories. The existence of these Scythian and Sarmatian warrior women offers a compelling link between myth and reality. Greek traders and travelers would have undoubtedly encountered these fierce nomadic tribes, where women often rode horses, hunted, and fought alongside men. It's plausible that stories of these formidable female fighters, perhaps exaggerated and embellished over generations, transformed into the Amazon myth. This doesn't mean a literal nation of women living without men existed, but rather that the Greeks interpreted glimpses of a different societal structure, one where women held more active roles in warfare and public life than their own culture allowed, through the lens of their unique mythology. The tales of Amazons, therefore, reflect not only Greek anxieties and fascinations, but also a genuine cultural exchange and observation of different societal norms on the periphery of their known world, blurring the lines between what was imagined and what was truly observed. From the enigmatic Amazons of antiquity, we now journey to the Emerald Isle of Ireland, a land steeped in mist-shrouded myths and heroic sagas. Here, we encounter a figure of unparalleled ferocity and tragic destiny, Cú Chulainn, often translated as the Hound of Ulster. He is the central hero of the Ulster cycle, one of the four great cycles of Irish mythology, and his tales are as wild and untamed as the Irish landscape itself. Cú Chulainn is no mere mortal champion. He is a demigod born of a human mother, Daichtine, and the powerful Celtic god Lugh, making him a figure of immense strength and divine lineage, destined for greatness from his very inception. His story is one of superhuman feats, monstrous transformations, and a life lived with such intensity that it could only end in tragedy, embodying the fierce spirit and heroic ideals of ancient Celtic society. Cú Chulainn's legend is filled with incredible feats, often performed in his youth, long before he reached manhood. Even as a child, originally named Setanta, he displayed prodigious strength and skill. The most famous example of this is how he earned his iconic name. One day, while playing hurling, he accidentally killed the ferocious guard dog of Culann, the smith, a beast so powerful that it took 3 chains and 9 men to hold it. Filled with remorse, Setanta offered to take the dog's place until a new one could be trained, thus becoming Cú Chulainn, the Hound of Culann. This early incident foreshadows his life of protecting Ulster and defending its people. His training under the warrior woman Scathach further honed his abilities, teaching him martial arts, the use of various weapons, and specialized combat techniques, including the legendary Gíbolg, a barbed spear that could only be wielded by Cú Chulainn himself and inflicted devastating, unavoidable wounds. One of the most terrifying and distinctive aspects of Cú Chulainn's power is his riostrad, or battle frenzy, often referred to as his warp spasm. When overcome by powerful emotions, particularly in battle, Cú Chulainn would undergo a grotesque and terrifying physical transformation. His body would contort, his muscles would bulge beyond human limits, one eye would recede into his head while the other bulged out, and his hair would stand on end, each strand tipped with a drop of blood. A searing heat emanated from him, capable of melting snow and scorching the earth, and a hero's light, or luchthon, would emanate from his forehead. This riostrad made him an unstoppable force, a whirlwind of destruction on the battlefield. But it also made him uncontrollable and dangerous to allies and enemies alike. This monstrous transformation serves as a powerful metaphor for the berserker rage seen in many warrior cultures, but in Cú Chulainn, it is elevated to a supernatural, almost demonic level, highlighting the dual nature of his immense power, a blessing and a curse. The tragic arc of Cú Chulainn's life is central to his myth. Despite his invincibility in battle, he was bound by Jisa, or sacred taboos, prophecies, and a fate that saw him live a short but glorious life. His death, in particular, is a poignant moment in Irish mythology. Throughout his life, he single-handedly defended Ulster against the armies of Queen Medb of Connacht during the epic cattle raid of Cooley, often turning the tide of battle through his sheer will and personal combat. However, his adherence to honor, his personal code, and ultimately the breaking of his Jisa led to his downfall. In his final moments, mortally wounded but unwilling to fall, he tied himself to a standing stone to face his enemies upright, dying with his sword in hand, facing his foes to the very last breath. This stoic defiance in the face of death encapsulates the Celtic heroic ideal, a glorious, if short, life lived with unparalleled bravery and unwavering loyalty. While the supernatural elements of Cu Chulain's story are clearly mythical, many scholars believe that the Ulster cycle, and Cu Chulain within it, contains historical kernels reflecting the tribal warfare and heroic ideals of Iron Age Ireland. The tales describe a society focused on cattle raiding, individual combat, and a warrior aristocracy, all of which align with archaeological and historical understandings of ancient Celtic culture. The Ryostrad, for instance, may be a mythological exaggeration of real-life instances of battle frenzy or drug-induced states of heightened aggression. The constant feuds and battles depicted in the cycle echo the fragmented political landscape of pre-Christian Ireland. Thus, Cu Chulain serves as more than just a mythological figure. He is a powerful symbol of Irish national identity, an embodiment of defiance, courage, and a deep connection to the ancient past, vividly illustrating the raw power and unyielding spirit of the Celtic warrior. Moving now from the earthly battles of legendary warriors, we soar into the celestial realms of Chinese mythology, where we encounter a figure whose martial prowess transcends even the most formidable human champions, Sun Wukong, the Monkey King. While primarily a mythological figure famous from the classic novel Journey to the West, his incredible fighting skills and rebellious spirit embody a warrior archetype unlike any other. Sun Wukong is not just a fighter, he is a force of nature, a trickster god, and an embodiment of untamed power whose battles often represent internal struggles as much as external ones, making his journey a profound lesson in perseverance and humility through conflict. The very foundation of Sun Wukong's legendary martial capabilities lies in his origins. Born from a magical stone, he learned the arts of cultivation and immortality from a Taoist patriarch. This training endowed him with superhuman strength, incredible speed, and immunity to various forms of attack. But his true fighting genius shines through his mastery of the 72 earthly transformations, a skill that allows him to change into virtually anything: animals, objects, even other people, with uncanny precision. This isn't mere shape-shifting, it's a strategic tool that makes him an unpredictable and almost unbeatable opponent. Imagine a warrior who can transform into a tiny fly to scout enemy defenses, then instantly swell to a giant to crush his foes, or perhaps become a mighty bird to escape a trap, only to reappear behind his unsuspecting adversary. These transformations aren't just for show. They are integral to his fighting style, allowing him to adapt to any situation, infiltrate heavily guarded areas, and outwit opponents far stronger or more numerous than himself. Complementing his transformative abilities is his iconic weapon, the Rui Jingu Bang, or the As You Will golden-banded cudgel. This is no ordinary staff. It's a magical, sentient weapon that was originally a measuring rod for the Dragon King of the East Sea. Weighing over 13,000 pounds, it can change its size and length at Sun Wukong's command, shrinking to a needle to hide behind his ear or expanding into a colossal pillar to smash mountains or bridge vast chasms. The cudgel itself is a central character in his martial escapades, capable of fighting independently and responding to his mental commands. With it, Sun Wukong can deflect powerful blows, perform dazzling acrobatic maneuvers, and deliver devastating strikes that can level armies or subdue celestial beings. His fights are often described with vivid, almost choreographic detail, showcasing his agility, his powerful strikes with the staff, and his sheer bravado in facing impossible odds. Sun Wukong's journey throughout Journey to the West is essentially a series of epic battles, each serving as a test of his martial prowess, his wit, and ultimately his character. From his initial rebellion against the Jade Emperor, where he single-handedly defeats the entire celestial army, including powerful gods and generals, to his later role as protector of the Buddhist monk Xuanzang on the perilous pilgrimage to obtain sacred scriptures, Sun Wukong is constantly engaged in conflict. These battles are not always straightforward contests of strength. Many times his adversaries are powerful demons with unique magical abilities, requiring Sun Wukong to use his intelligence, cunning, and diverse skill set to overcome them. His fights with celestial beings, for example, often highlight the contrast between his raw, untamed power and the established, sometimes rigid, order of the heavens. Beyond the physical combat, Sun Wukong's battles often represent profound internal struggles. His journey with Xuanzang is a path toward spiritual enlightenment, and each demon he faces can be seen as a manifestation of an internal vice or obstacle: pride, greed, ignorance. His initial arrogance and rebellious nature gradually give way to a deeper understanding of patience, loyalty, and empathy. The numerous times he is punished for his impulsiveness or his inability to control his temper, only to be released to fight another day, underscore the theme of perseverance and the long, arduous road to true humility. His incredible resilience and determination to overcome any obstacle, no matter how insurmountable it seems, make him a compelling figure whose martial prowess is inextricably linked to his spiritual growth. He is not just a warrior seeking conquest, but a soul striving for redemption and understanding, showcasing how even the most formidable fighters can evolve through their trials. From the magical realm of the Monkey King, we descend to the unforgiving steppes of Central Asia, where a very different kind of warrior rose to reshape the entire known world: Genghis Khan. His name, even today, evokes images of boundless power, ruthless efficiency, and an almost mythical ability to conquer. He was the historical figure who forged the largest contiguous empire in history, stretching from Eastern Europe to the Pacific Ocean. Yet his legend often overshadows the man, portraying him as either an unstoppable force of nature or a brutal, indiscriminate destroyer. The duality of Genghis Khan, the strategic genius versus the mythical harbinger of doom, is one of history's most compelling enigmas, and understanding it means separating fact from the fear and awe he inspired. The historical Genghis Khan, born Temujin, emerged from a fragmented nomadic society in the late 12th century, where tribal warfare was a constant state of existence. His early life was marked by hardship, betrayal, and struggle, experiences that undoubtedly forged his indomitable will and strategic mind. What set him apart from previous tribal leaders was not merely his ambition, but his revolutionary approach to warfare and political organization. He understood that loyalty, discipline, and unity were paramount. His military strategies were innovative and devastatingly effective, centered on the unparalleled mobility and firepower of his cavalry. Mongol horsemen were masters of the composite bow, capable of firing accurately while riding at full gallop, a distinct advantage over most static infantry and less mobile cavalry forces. They employed sophisticated tactics like feigned retreats, encirclement movements, and rapid, coordinated assaults that overwhelmed enemies long before they could react. This wasn't just brute force, it was a highly disciplined and adaptable fighting machine, capable of operating across vast distances with remarkable speed. Beyond their tactical brilliance, the sheer scale of Mongol mobility revolutionized warfare. They could cover incredible distances in a short period, often appearing before their enemies even knew they were coming. Their logistics were simple but effective, relying on their horses for transport, food, and even blood if necessary. This self-sufficiency allowed them to bypass traditional supply lines, making them incredibly agile and unpredictable opponents. Genghis Khan also mastered the art of psychological warfare. His reputation preceded him, often causing cities to surrender without a fight. He frequently offered surrenders with clear terms: submit and live, resist and face total annihilation. While the latter was often brutal, it was a calculated strategy to minimize prolonged sieges and conserve his forces. The sight of vast, disciplined Mongol hordes seemingly appearing out of nowhere was enough to break the will of many defenders, turning their fear into a weapon as potent as any arrow or sword. The sheer psychological impact of Genghis Khan and his Mongol armies was immense. Their reputation was carefully cultivated, often exaggerated by both his own people to inspire awe and loyalty, and by his enemies to sow fear and justify their defeats. In Europe and the Islamic world, the Mongols were often described as the devil's horsemen, or the scourge of God, a divine punishment for sins. These narratives, while terrifying, inadvertently contributed to Genghis Khan's legendary status, transforming him from a human conqueror into an almost supernatural destructive force. This terrifying image often overshadowed his administrative genius. Genghis Khan established a sophisticated communication network, a unified legal code known as the Yasa, and promoted religious tolerance within his empire, demonstrating a vision far beyond mere conquest. He understood that to hold an empire together, more than just military might was required. It needed laws, infrastructure, and a degree of social cohesion. The dual portrayal of Genghis Khan, the military genius and the mythical destroyer, is a testament to the profound impact he had on human history. The legends speak volumes about the awe, terror, and fascination he inspired. Whether pillaging cities or fostering trade along the revitalized Silk Road, his actions reshaped global geopolitics, connecting East and West in unprecedented ways. His legacy is a complex tapestry woven with threads of unprecedented violence and remarkable innovation, demonstrating how a single individual can, through sheer will and strategic brilliance, transcend their mortal origins and become an enduring, almost mythical force in human memory. From the strategic brilliance of Genghis Khan, who built an empire, we now turn our attention to a figure whose impact was less about building and more about terrifying demolition, Attila the Hun. His very name sends shivers down the spine, conjuring images of relentless hordes and unbridled destruction. Attila, the fearsome warrior who terrorized Europe in the 5th century, earned the chilling moniker, the Scourge of God, a title that vividly encapsulates the profound dread and despair he inspired across the collapsing Roman Empire. His legend, however, is a complex tapestry woven from genuine military prowess, strategic psychological warfare, and the often exaggerated narratives of his terrified enemies, primarily Roman and Christian chroniclers who struggled to comprehend, let alone defeat, his seemingly unstoppable forces. Attila's rise to power in the mid-5th century coincided with a period of immense instability in Europe. The Western Roman Empire was already in a state of terminal decline, fractured and vulnerable. Into this volatile landscape rode the Huns, a nomadic people originating from the Eurasian steppes, whose fearsome reputation preceded them. Under Attila's leadership, the Huns became a unified and devastating military force, renowned for their exceptional horsemanship, their skill with the composite bow, and their rapid, unpredictable maneuvers. Unlike the more structured armies of Rome or the Goths, the Huns operated with a fluidity and ferocity that made them incredibly difficult to counter. They did not adhere to conventional siege warfare if they could avoid it. Rather, they preferred swift, devastating raids, overwhelming their opponents with sheer speed and a hail of arrows before closing in for brutal, close-quarters combat. Their tactics were designed not just to win battles, but to break the will of their enemies, leaving behind a trail of psychological devastation that often softened future targets. Attila's military campaigns were truly sweeping, extending his dominion and terror across vast swaths of Europe. From his power base in what is now Hungary, he launched devastating raids into the Balkans, forcing the Eastern Roman Byzantine Empire to pay crippling tributes to avoid total destruction. But his most famous and impactful campaign struck deep into the heart of the Western Roman Empire. In 451, he led his massive Hunnic confederation into Gaul, intent on subjugating the region. This invasion culminated in the Battle of the Catalonian Plains, one of the largest and bloodiest battles of late antiquity, where a coalition of Roman and Visigothic forces, led by the Roman general Aetius and the Visigothic king Theodoric I, managed to halt Attila's advance. While a tactical stalemate, it was a crucial strategic victory for the Romans, preventing Attila from conquering Gaul. Yet the following year, in 452, Attila turned his attention to Italy itself, sacking and destroying numerous cities, including Aquileia and Milan, spreading terror all the way to the gates of Rome. His decision not to sack Rome remains a historical enigma, often attributed to the pleas of Pope Leo I and prominent Roman senators, as well as the outbreak of plague among his troops and logistical difficulties. The psychological warfare employed by Attila was as potent as his military might. He deliberately cultivated his image as an unstoppable, divinely appointed force of destruction, a living embodiment of chaos. Roman and Christian writers, unable to explain such overwhelming devastation through conventional means, began to label him Flagellum Dei, the scourge of God, believing he was sent by God to punish humanity for its sins. This religious interpretation, while comforting for some, simultaneously amplified his terrifying reputation. Stories of his cruelty, often exaggerated, spread far and wide, causing panic and mass evacuations. Cities would surrender at the mere rumor of his approach. He understood the power of fear and used it masterfully, often demanding tribute from kingdoms simply to spare them the horror of his presence. This reputation, fueled by both his own actions and the desperate narratives of his victims, became a self-fulfilling prophecy, making his conquests easier and his legend more entrenched. The evolution of Attila's legend is a fascinating study in how history can be shaped by the perspectives of the victors and the vanquished. For the Romans, he was an existential threat, a monstrous barbarian whose presence signaled the end of their world. For the Christian chroniclers, he was a divine instrument of judgment, making his invincibility a theological inevitability. This perspective inevitably exaggerated his cruelty, his barbarism, and his seemingly supernatural ability to appear anywhere and conquer anything. Over centuries, these narratives solidified into the image we largely recognize today, a demonic, world-ending force, rather than a brilliant, albeit brutal, military commander driven by strategic goals. Even though his empire dissolved quickly after his death in 453, Attila's name endured, becoming a byword for devastation and an almost mythical embodiment of untamed power. His legend serves as a powerful reminder of how profound fear and the narratives of the defeated can transform a historical figure into an enigmatic, larger-than-life myth, forever etched into the collective consciousness. From the destructive force of Attila the Hun, we now transition to a figure whose name is often synonymous with national defiance against overwhelming odds, William Wallace. His legend, immortalized in the film Braveheart, paints a picture of a fearless warrior, a champion of freedom who rallied his countrymen against English tyranny. But the true story of William Wallace, the Scottish knight who became a central figure in the wars of Scottish independence, is a fascinating blend of historical reality and romanticized myth, a prime example of how a nation's narrative can shape its heroes. Separating the historical man from the cinematic icon reveals a powerful figure whose leadership genuinely inspired a nation, even if the details have been dramatically embellished for narrative impact. William Wallace emerged into the historical spotlight during a period of profound crisis for Scotland. In the late 13th century, following the death of King Alexander III without a clear heir, Scotland found itself embroiled in a succession dispute that ultimately led to the intervention and eventual subjugation by King Edward I of England, often dubbed Longshanks. Edward's imposition of English rule, heavy taxation, and disdain for Scottish traditions ignited widespread resentment. It was into this powder keg of discontent that William Wallace, a relatively minor landholder from Elderslie, rose to prominence not as a nobleman with an army, but as a leader of a popular uprising. His early actions were marked by guerrilla warfare tactics, ambushing English garrisons and targeting tax collectors, quickly building a reputation among the common folk as a defiant force against English oppression. He was not the lone, unkempt Highlander of popular imagination, but likely a man of some education, capable of leading and organizing a resistance movement. Wallace's most significant military triumph came in 1197 at the Battle of Stirling Bridge. This was a masterclass in tactical warfare, demonstrating Wallace's strategic brilliance far beyond mere brute force. The English army, led by the Earl of Surrey, was numerically superior, but Wallace understood the crucial advantage offered by the terrain, a narrow wooden bridge over the River Forth. Instead of engaging in open battle, Wallace patiently waited for a portion of the English forces to cross the bridge, then unleashed his Scottish spearmen, known as schiltrons, tight formations of defensive pikes, to cut off and annihilate the isolated English vanguard. The bridge, clogged with fleeing English soldiers, collapsed under the weight, trapping many more. This decisive victory, achieved against overwhelming odds, not only shattered the myth of English invincibility, but also demonstrated Wallace's remarkable ability to exploit terrain and discipline his forces. It transformed him from a local rebel leader into the Guardian of Scotland, a national hero whose name resonated across the land. Despite this monumental victory, Wallace's later campaigns were less successful, reflecting the immense challenge of maintaining a coherent Scottish army against the vast resources of the English crown. He faced internal divisions among the Scottish nobility, many of whom were wary of a commoner holding such power, and he struggled to secure consistent support for a prolonged war. His defeat at the Battle of Falkirk in 1298, where English longbowmen decimated the Scottish schiltrons from a distance, marked a turning point. Wallace subsequently resigned his guardianship and spent several years attempting to gain support from European powers like France, but to no avail. His eventual capture in 1205, betrayed by a Scottish knight, and his brutal execution in London as a traitor underscored the harsh realities of rebellion against a powerful empire. His execution, which involved being hanged, drawn, and quartered, was deliberately gruesome, intended to serve as a stark warning to any who dared defy English rule. The legacy of William Wallace, however, far outlived his physical demise. His martyrdom, rather than extinguishing the flame of Scottish resistance, galvanized it. His image, cultivated by subsequent generations of Scottish patriots, became a potent symbol of national identity and an enduring inspiration for freedom. The film Braveheart, while taking considerable liberties with historical accuracy, from his romantic relationships and the dramatic scale of certain battles to his anachronistic use of a kilt, played a pivotal role in popularizing his story globally in the late 20th century. It amplified the romanticized image of Wallace as a singular, almost messianic figure leading an oppressed people. While the film's historical inaccuracies are well documented, its emotional power lies in tapping into the universal themes of liberty, sacrifice, and the fight against injustice. William Wallace, whether the historical leader or the cinematic hero, remains an enigmatic icon, demonstrating how historical figures can be adapted and transformed into powerful myths that continue to shape collective memory and national spirit. From the battlefields of Scotland, where William Wallace fought for national liberty, we journey now to the heart of the mighty Roman Republic, a civilization built on conquest and sustained by subjugation. Here, we encounter a figure whose name still resonates as a symbol of defiance against overwhelming oppression: Spartacus, the Thracian gladiator who ignited the largest slave revolt in Roman history. Was he just a brutal, desperate slave, or a visionary revolutionary leader fighting for universal freedom? This question lies at the core of his enduring legend, a narrative shaped as much by later ideals as by historical fact, transforming him from a footnote in Roman history into a timeless icon of resistance. The context of Spartacus's rebellion is crucial to understanding its audacity and sheer scale. The Roman Republic at its height was an economic powerhouse fueled by vast numbers of slaves. These were not just domestic servants. Slaves formed the backbone of Roman agriculture, mining, and construction, often living and toiling under horrific conditions. Gladiatorial schools, like the one in Capua where Spartacus was trained, were essentially human training camps preparing men for brutal combat entertainment. These institutions were harsh, designed to break the human spirit and mold warriors for the arena. Given the brutal realities of their existence, daily violence, forced servitude, and a life with no prospect of freedom, it's unsurprising that sparks of rebellion occasionally ignited. What makes Spartacus's revolt unique was not merely its occurrence, but its initial success and the incredible momentum it gained, challenging the very social fabric of Roman power. The idea that a few gladiators could escape and then rally tens of thousands to their cause was to the Romans an unthinkable affront to their perceived natural order. Spartacus, along with around 70 fellow gladiators, broke free from the Capuan ludus in approximately 73 BCE. Their escape was unplanned and desperate, armed initially with kitchen utensils and whatever weapons they could seize. What began as a small band of fugitives quickly swelled into an army, drawing in runaway slaves, impoverished freemen, and disaffected peasants from across the Italian countryside. This rapid growth was a testament to the desperate desire for freedom among the oppressed masses. Spartacus, a Thracian by birth and possibly a former auxiliary soldier, possessed remarkable military acumen. He understood how to organize and train this disparate force, turning a rabble into a formidable fighting machine. His leadership was not just about inspiring hope, it was about tactical brilliance. He utilized guerrilla warfare, ambushing Roman forces in the rugged terrain, exploiting their overconfidence and seizing their supplies and weapons. This ability to consistently outmaneuver and defeat Roman legions' armies renowned for their discipline and training sent shockwaves through the Republic, forcing Rome to confront a threat they considered beneath them, yet one that threatened their very foundations. The challenges Spartacus faced were immense, both militarily and logistically. His army, while large, was a constantly evolving entity composed of diverse ethnic groups with different languages and fighting styles, united primarily by their desire for freedom. Maintaining discipline, feeding tens of thousands of people, and forging them into a cohesive fighting force was a monumental task. They lacked a permanent base, relying on movement and plunder, which inevitably brought them into conflict with settled populations. Despite these challenges, Spartacus led his forces to victory after victory, defeating several Roman consular armies. His strategic goal, according to some ancient accounts, was not to overthrow Rome itself, but to lead his followers to freedom, possibly across the Alps to their homelands or to establish a new, free community away from Roman control. However, internal divisions, particularly between the Thracian and Gallic factions within his army, and the allure of plundering wealthy Roman towns, ultimately prevented a unified strategy and led to their eventual downfall. The Roman Senate, finally roused to the full gravity of the threat, appointed Marcus Licinius Crassus, a wealthy and ambitious politician and general, with extraordinary powers to crush the rebellion. Spartacus's final stand in 71 BC was a desperate and heroic battle against Crassus's legions. Despite their courage, the slave army was ultimately outmatched by the superior training, equipment, and overwhelming numbers of the Roman forces. Spartacus himself is said to have died fighting bravely, attempting to reach Crassus in the thick of battle. The aftermath was brutal and deliberately terrifying. 6,000 captured rebels were crucified along the Appian Way, a grim warning against future defiance. Yet, even in defeat, Spartacus's legacy lived on, whispered in hushed tones among the oppressed. Over centuries, his story has been reinterpreted, adapting to the struggles of different eras. In the 19th century, he became a symbol for abolitionists fighting slavery. In the 20th century, he was embraced by socialist and communist movements as a champion of the proletariat against oppressive ruling classes. The iconic film of 1960, starring Kirk Douglas, propelled him into global consciousness, solidifying his image as the ultimate freedom fighter. This evolving myth demonstrates how a historical figure, even one whose true motivations and detailed actions are lost to time, can be transformed into a powerful, ever-relevant symbol, embodying the universal human longing for liberty and resistance against injustice. From the desperate struggle of Spartacus, the enslaved warrior, we ascend to the ethereal realm of divine inspiration, where the unlikely figure of Joan of Arc emerges, a peasant girl whose astonishing trajectory from obscure village life to military leadership and martyrdom remains one of history's most profound enigmas. Was she truly a divinely appointed warrior, an instrument of God's will, or a shrewd political tool manipulated by powerful forces in a desperate age? This fundamental question lies at the heart of her timeless appeal, as her story intertwines faith, warfare, and national identity in a way that continues to captivate and challenge our understanding of history. Joan of Arc surfaced during the most desperate phase of the 100 Years' War, a protracted conflict that had raged between England and France for nearly a century. By the early 15th century, France was on its knees. Its king, Charles VII, was uncrowned and demoralized, and much of the northern territory, including the crucial city of Orleans, was under English occupation. The French spirit was broken, their armies fragmented, and their leadership seemed utterly devoid of hope. It was into this abyss of despair that a young, illiterate peasant girl from Domremy, barely a teenager, claimed to hear divine voices, those of Saint Michael, Saint Catherine, and Saint Margaret, commanding her to lead France to victory, crown its rightful king, and expel the English invaders. Her unwavering conviction, despite her humble origins and lack of military experience, was so profound that it led her, against all conventional wisdom, to the uncrowned King Charles himself. Her claims of divine guidance were met with understandable skepticism initially. How could a simple girl know the will of God, much less lead armies? Yet, something about Joan's sincerity and fierce determination compelled Charles to grant her an audience. After rigorous theological examinations by churchmen, who found no heresy in her claims and a desperate need for a miracle, Charles, against the advice of many of his counselors, decided to risk it all. He gave Joan command of a small contingent of soldiers and sent her to the besieged city of Orleans in 1429. This decision was a gamble of monumental proportions, betting the fate of a kingdom on the visions of a 17-year-old girl. What followed was nothing short of miraculous. Joan, adopting male attire and carrying a banner rather than a sword, immediately revitalized the demoralized French forces. Her presence, her unwavering belief, and her bold, often unorthodox strategies inspired the troops and terrified the English. Within days, the siege of Orleans was lifted, a victory that seemed impossible just weeks before and marked a dramatic turning point in the war. Joan's military successes continued with astonishing speed. Following Orleans, she urged Charles to march to Reims, the traditional site of French coronations, even though it was deep in enemy territory. Against all strategic advice, she led the French army through hostile lands, securing towns along the way, and enabling Charles's coronation as King Charles VII in Reims Cathedral in July 1429. This act was not merely symbolic, it legitimized Charles's rule in the eyes of many French people and dramatically shifted the psychological tide of the war. Joan's presence on the battlefield, her rallying cries, and her uncanny ability to predict future events, which her followers attributed to her divine voices, convinced her troops that God was truly on their side. Her leadership was characterized by a directness and strategic insight that baffled seasoned commanders, demonstrating a natural military aptitude that defies simple explanation given her background. However, Joan's meteoric rise was followed by an equally swift and tragic downfall. Her subsequent attempts to reclaim Paris were unsuccessful, and her influence with King Charles began to wane as more conservative advisors regained favor. In 1430, she was captured by Burgundian forces, allies of the English, and subsequently sold to the English for a considerable sum. The English, desperate to discredit Charles VII's legitimacy, which was inextricably linked to Joan's divine intervention, orchestrated a politically motivated trial for heresy and witchcraft. Despite her eloquent and often defiant defense, the ecclesiastical court, composed of pro-English clerics, found her guilty. On May 30, 1431, Joan of Arc was burned at the stake in Rouen, dying a martyr just 19 years old. Her execution was intended to extinguish her legend and invalidate her victories, but it achieved precisely the opposite, setting the stage for her transfiguration into a national and religious icon. The myth of Joan of Arc was shaped by powerful political and religious agendas both in her lifetime and for centuries after her death. Immediately following her execution, her enemies sought to cement her image as a heretic and a witch, a tool of the devil. Yet within 25 years, her case was re-examined by a papal court, which overturned her conviction, declaring her innocent and a martyr. This rehabilitation was partly driven by King Charles VII, who, having been legitimized by her, now sought to clear his own name from association with a condemned heretic. Over the ensuing centuries, during periods of national crisis or revival, Joan's image was continually reshaped. She became a powerful symbol of French unity and resistance against foreign invaders, embraced by figures ranging from Napoleon to the monarchists and later by the secular republicans. The Catholic Church, after centuries, finally canonized her as a saint in 1920, recognizing her extraordinary faith and sacrifice. Her story, whether interpreted as a testament to divine intervention, the remarkable resilience of the human spirit, or a powerful example of how myth serves political ends, continues to resonate, forever intertwining the sacred and the secular in the tapestry of French national identity. From the spiritual crusade of Joan of Arc, who fought for the very soul of France, we now confront a figure whose name is synonymous with ultimate sacrifice and unwavering courage in the face of insurmountable odds, Leonidas of Sparta. His legend, inextricably linked with the Battle of Thermopylae, depicts him as the archetypal warrior king, leading a small band of 300 Spartans in a heroic last stand against the colossal Persian Empire. While modern portrayals, particularly in popular culture, often dramatize this event for maximum impact, the true story of Leonidas and his men is a profound testament to military discipline, strategic brilliance, and a unique Spartan ethos, offering a powerful blend of historical fact and cultivated heroism. To truly appreciate the magnitude of Leonidas's stand, we must understand the geopolitical landscape of the Greco-Persian Wars in the early 5th century BC. The Persian Empire under Xerxes I was an unprecedented superpower stretching from modern-day India to Egypt and encompassing vast resources and an army of staggering size, often estimated in the hundreds of thousands, if not millions. Their invasion of Greece was not merely a territorial expansion but an attempt to subjugate the free city-states, which were fiercely independent but often disunited. The year 480 BC marked a pivotal moment as Xerxes' forces, including a massive navy, advanced toward mainland Greece. The Greek city-states, despite their internal rivalries, recognized the existential threat and formed a Hellenic league to coordinate their defense. It was in this desperate context that the decision was made to halt the Persian advance at the narrow coastal pass of Thermopylae. The strategic importance of Thermopylae, meaning hot gates, cannot be overstated. It was a geographical choke point, a narrow strip of land between the mountains and the sea, effectively nullifying the Persian numerical superiority. For a large army to pass through, it had to do so in small columns, negating their overwhelming numbers and allowing a smaller, disciplined force to hold them at bay. This was the perfect terrain for the Spartan hoplites, renowned throughout the ancient world for their heavy armor, their formidable discipline, and their mastery of the phalanx formation, a tightly packed, shielded wall of spears. The plan was not to defeat the entire Persian army at Thermopylae, but to delay it long enough for the main Greek forces to prepare further defenses to the south, and for the Greek navy to engage the Persian fleet in the nearby Straits of Artemisium. Leonidas, commanding a vanguard force of around 7,000 Greeks, including his elite 300 Spartans, understood this critical objective. The actual battle unfolded over 3 days. For the first 2 days, Leonidas and his forces held the pass with astonishing success, repelling wave after wave of Persian attacks. The Spartan phalanx, a virtually impenetrable wall of bronze and iron, proved devastatingly effective in the confined space. Persian immortals, the elite Persian guard, were thrown back with heavy losses. The disciplined Greeks rotated their troops, keeping fresh fighters on the front lines, and their superior weaponry and training shone through. Xerxes, observing from a distance, reportedly grew increasingly frustrated. However, on the third day, a local Malian shepherd named Ephialtes betrayed the Greeks by revealing a hidden mountain path that bypassed the main pass. Upon learning of this flanking maneuver, Leonidas, understanding that his position was now untenable and that total annihilation was imminent, made a fateful decision. He ordered the majority of the Greek forces to retreat, preserving them for future battles. Leonidas, however, remained with his 300 Spartans, along with around 700 Thespians and 400 Thebans. Their decision to stay was not a suicidal charge, but a calculated act of defiance and ultimate sacrifice. They held the pass one last time, pinning the Persian army as the rest of the Greek forces made their escape. The Spartans fought to the last man, dying with unparalleled bravery. The last stand, as depicted in historical accounts like that of Herodotus, speaks of their spears breaking, forcing them to fight with swords and even their bare hands before they were finally overwhelmed by arrows and the sheer weight of Persian numbers. Leonidas himself fell early in the final assault, and his body was fought over fiercely before the Persians finally recovered it. His head was later impaled on a stake, a testament to Xerxes' fury and the deep impression Leonidas had made. The legacy of Thermopylae extends far beyond the battlefield. It immediately became a powerful symbol of Greek unity, courage, and self-sacrifice against foreign tyranny. The epitaph inscribed on the memorial stone at the pass, attributed to the poet Simonides of Chios, reads, "Go tell the Spartans, stranger passing by, that here obedient to their laws we lie." This simple phrase encapsulated the Spartan ethos of unwavering duty and honor unto death. The tale was cultivated and retold for centuries, not just as a historical event but as a foundational myth for Western civilization, embodying the spirit of freedom and the defense of individual liberty against autocratic power. Modern portrayals, while often dramatic, draw from this powerful narrative, reinforcing the idea of a few brave men standing firm against impossible odds. Archaeological findings at the site, including Persian arrowheads and human remains, corroborate the ferocity of the battle. Leonidas, through his leadership and his ultimate sacrifice, transitioned from a historical king to an enduring symbol, demonstrating how a singular act of courage can resonate through millennia, forever inspiring generations with the power of resistance and the nobility of a fight for freedom. From the monumental sacrifice of Leonidas, the warrior king, we now shift our focus to an equally compelling, yet perhaps even more unusual, figure from another time and culture, one that defies conventional expectations of warfare and gender, Tamogozan. Her name, whispered through the centuries, conjures images of a fearsome female warrior, one of the few renowned Anabujaisha, or woman warrior, in Japanese feudal history. Portrayed in the epic The Tale of the Hike, she is depicted as a figure of almost mythical strength, unmatched skill, and fearsome beauty, capable of outmatching even the most formidable male samurai. The enigma of Tomo Gozen lies in the fascinating tension between her literary grandeur and the sparse historical records, prompting us to ask, was she a real historical person, a composite of several brave women, or a legendary embodiment of an idealized female warrior? The context for Tomo Gozen's emergence is the Genpei War, a brutal civil conflict that raged in Japan during the late 12th century, pitting the Terra clan against the Minamoto clan for control of the country. This was a period of intense martial prowess where individual heroism and clan loyalty were paramount. While noble women in feudal Japan were traditionally trained in self-defense and household management, the idea of a woman leading troops in battle or engaging in single combat was highly unconventional. Yet, The Tale of the Hike, a pivotal literary work chronicling the Genpei War, presents Tomo Gozen as a central and active participant in the conflict, serving under the command of Minamoto no Yoshinaka. The text describes her with awe and admiration. She was a remarkably strong archer, and as a swordswoman, she was a warrior worth 1,000, ready to confront a demon or a god, mounted or on foot. She handled unbroken horses with superb skill. She rode down perilous slopes and across treacherous paths. Never a horse did she ride that was not wounded. Of the warrior women whom the clan sent forth to battle, she was peerless. Such descriptions paint a picture of an almost superhuman figure, suggesting a literary embellishment of a historical individual, elevating her to a level of heroism rarely bestowed upon women in that era. Her legendary prowess is vividly illustrated in several key moments within The Tale of the Hike. One of the most striking accounts describes her actions during the Battle of Owazu in 1184, the decisive engagement where Yoshinaka's forces faced their ultimate defeat. As Yoshinaka's army dwindled under overwhelming odds, he urged Tomo to retreat, famously telling her, "You are a woman, so go away. If you die here, it will be a shame." But Tomo, loyal to the last, refused to abandon her lord. Instead, she performed one last act of defiance and valor. She spotted an enemy warrior, Onda no Hachiman, known for his great strength. Tomo charged him, unhorsed him, pulled him close, and then, with a powerful twist of her body, cut off his head. This gruesome yet heroic act, performed in the midst of a losing battle, served not only as a testament to her strength, but also as a final demonstration of her unwavering loyalty and ferocity. She then rode away, disappearing from the narrative, leaving her ultimate fate ambiguous and contributing to her enigmatic allure. The existence of Tomo Gozen, while celebrated in literature, remains a subject of debate among historians. There is no independent historical record outside The Tale of the Hike that definitively confirms her existence as a specific individual. Some scholars suggest she may have been a composite character, representing the collective bravery of women who may have unofficially participated or supported warriors during the Genpei War. Other historians argue that while her deeds might be exaggerated, the inclusion of such a prominent female warrior in a major historical epic suggests that there must have been real-life inspirations, women who defied societal norms and fought alongside men. Indeed, archaeological evidence and other historical documents confirm the existence of Anabujaisha throughout Japanese history. Women trained in martial arts to defend their homes and families, particularly during times of war when male warriors were away. Tomo Gozen, therefore, could be seen as the apotheosis of these real, albeit less documented, female samurai. Regardless of her precise historical veracity, Tomo Gozen's legend offers invaluable insights into gender roles and the perception of warfare in medieval Japan. Her portrayal challenges the common misconception that all women in feudal Japan were confined to domestic roles. She represents a powerful counter-narrative, illustrating that while rare, women could achieve legendary status through martial skill and courage. Her story also highlights the unique position of female warriors within a patriarchal society. Their strength was celebrated, but often with a degree of otherness or even exoticism, as if their abilities were almost supernatural for a woman. By presenting her as a warrior worth 1,000, ready to confront a demon or a god, the tale of the hike not only immortalized her but also subtly acknowledged the profound impact a woman could have on the battlefield. Tomo Gozen, whether factual or folkloric, remains a compelling symbol of female strength and defiance, a testament to the enduring power of a warrior spirit that transcends gender and time, showcasing an extraordinary figure in a world dominated by men. From the formidable female warriors of Japan, we now pivot to the sun-baked plains and ancient cities of medieval Spain, where a knight of unparalleled renown forged a legend that would resonate through the centuries as a symbol of national identity, El Cid. His full name, Rodrigo Diaz de Vivar, may not be as immediately recognizable as his famous moniker, which blends the Arabic al-Sayyid, meaning the Lord, with the Castilian Campeador, meaning the champion. This dual naming convention perfectly encapsulates the enigma of El Cid, a historical Castilian nobleman and warlord who navigated the complex, often contradictory, world of the Reconquista, a period of intense conflict and uneasy coexistence between Christian kingdoms and Muslim taifas, ultimately becoming a folk hero whose myth transcended religious and cultural divide. El Cid's historical campaigns unfolded during a tumultuous period in 11th century Spain, a land characterized by shifting alliances and constant warfare. Born into the minor nobility of Castile, Rodrigo Diaz quickly distinguished himself through his military prowess and strategic acumen, serving first under King Sancho II of Castile and later, following Sancho's assassination, under his brother Alfonso VI. Unlike many idealized heroes, Rodrigo's career was not a straightforward path of unwavering loyalty to a single cause. He was a mercenary at various points, fighting for both Christian and Muslim rulers, a pragmatic choice that allowed him to maintain his forces and influence in a fragmented political landscape. This fluidity, though perhaps jarring to modern notions of unwavering patriotism, was a calculated survival strategy in a world where allegiances were fluid and opportunities for advancement often lay beyond strict religious lines. His most celebrated historical achievement, and the one that cemented his legacy, was the conquest of Valencia. In the late 1100s, Valencia was a wealthy and strategically vital Muslim city-state. After years of intricate political maneuvering, siege warfare, and tactical brilliance, Rodrigo Diaz, leading his own independent army composed of both Christian and Muslim soldiers, captured Valencia in 1094 and ruled it as an independent principality until his death in 1099. This was a remarkable feat, not just militarily but politically, demonstrating his ability to govern a diverse population and maintain stability in a volatile region. His rule in Valencia, though short-lived, showcased a leader who was respected by Christians and Muslims alike, a testament to his fairness and military effectiveness rather than purely religious fervor. The myth of El Cid, however, was truly shaped and immortalized by the epic poem Canto de Mio Cid, or The Song of My Cid, composed around 1200. This masterpiece of medieval Spanish literature transformed the historical Rodrigo Diaz into a national hero, embodying idealized notions of chivalry, honor, and religious devotion for the nascent Spanish nation. The poem portrays him as a paragon of virtue, unjustly exiled by his king, who through his unwavering loyalty and military triumphs reclaims his honor and serves as a champion of Christendom against the Saracens. While the poem celebrates his Christian faith and his role in the Reconquista, it also subtly acknowledges his pragmatic dealings with Muslim rulers and his respect for their fighting prowess, reflecting the complex realities of medieval Spain. The poem romanticizes his famous sword, Tizona, imbuing it with mythical qualities, making it a symbol of his indomitable spirit. The duality of El Cid, as both a pragmatic historical figure and an idealized national icon, is fascinating. He was a man of his time, a skilled warlord who operated within the messy realities of medieval politics and warfare, often prioritizing personal gain and strategic advantage. Yet the myth transformed him into something more, a symbol of Christian Spain, a knight without fear or blemish, whose virtues were held up as an example for future generations. Visuals associated with him, such as the actual city of Valencia which he conquered, the fabled sword Tizona, whether the historical artifact or a later replica, and various medieval Spanish manuscripts depicting his deeds, all serve to bridge this gap between history and legend. They illustrate how his military prowess and pragmatic leadership became intertwined with idealized notions of chivalry and religious devotion, making him a complicated yet eternally compelling figure whose story continues to inspire and define the Spanish national character. From the complex, often religiously nuanced heroics of El Cid, we now shift our gaze to the rugged, defiant lands of ancient Britain, where a different kind of warrior queen ignited a rebellion that shook the very foundations of Roman imperial power. Her name, Boudica, pronounced Boudica, reverberates through history as a symbol of fierce independence, tragic vengeance, and unwavering resistance against overwhelming foreign might. She was the queen of the Iceni, a Celtic tribe inhabiting what is now Norfolk in eastern England, and her fiery uprising in 60 or 61 CE remains one of the most dramatic and brutal episodes in early Roman Britain, cementing her place as an enigmatic legend whose story inspires even today. To understand Boudica's fury, we must first grasp the harsh realities of Roman occupation. When the Romans first invaded Britain in 43 CE, they encountered a patchwork of independent Celtic tribes, each with its own customs and leadership. Initially, some tribes, like the Iceni, were treated as client kingdoms, allowed a degree of autonomy in exchange for allegiance to Rome. However, this fragile peace shattered upon the death of Boudica's husband, King Prasutagus. Despite Prasutagus willing his kingdom jointly to his daughters and the Roman Emperor Nero, Roman law did not recognize female inheritance. The Romans, disdainful of Celtic traditions, seized the Iceni lands, publicly flogged Boudica, and raped her daughters. This act of extreme cruelty, combined with heavy taxation and the growing arrogance of Roman officials, lit the fuse of a rebellion that would soon engulf much of Roman Britain. The violation of their queen and her daughters was not merely a personal affront. It was a profound dishonor to the entire Iceni tribe, a blatant disregard for their customs, and a calculated humiliation intended to break their spirit, but it instead forged a burning desire for vengeance. Boudica, a woman described by the Roman historian Cassius Dio as being very tall, with a harsh voice and a piercing gaze, a great mass of bright red hair that fell to her hips, wearing a large golden torque and a multicolored tunic, emerged as the charismatic leader of the combined Iceni and Trinovantes tribes. Her ability to unite disparate Celtic factions against the common Roman enemy was a testament to her persuasive power and the depth of anti-Roman sentiment. The initial phase of her rebellion was remarkably swift and devastatingly effective. The first target was Camulogenum, the Roman colonial capital, now modern-day Colchester. This city, filled with retired Roman soldiers and settlers, was a symbol of Roman oppression and a repository of Roman wealth. The Celtic warriors swept down upon it with unprecedented fury, utterly destroying the city and slaughtering its inhabitants without mercy. Archaeological excavations at Colchester have uncovered thick layers of burnt debris and human remains, grim evidence of the inferno that consumed the Roman settlement. Emboldened by their victory and fueled by their thirst for revenge, Boudica's forces next turned their attention to Londinium, the bustling Roman trading settlement and early version of modern London. Though not a formal colony, Londinium was a vital hub for Roman commerce and administration. The Roman governor, Gaius Suetonius Paulinus, finding himself strategically isolated and unable to defend the city, was forced to evacuate its inhabitants and retreat, leaving Londinium to Boudicca's wrath. The city met a fate similar to Colchester, razed to the ground with its remaining inhabitants put to the sword. The archaeological evidence here, too, tells a chilling story. A distinct Boudiccan destruction layer, a dark band of ash and burnt material found beneath later Roman street levels, stands as a silent witness to the ferocity of the Celtic attack. Following Londinium, the city of Verulamium, now St. Albans, also fell, suffering the same brutal fate. It's estimated that between 70,000 and 80,000 Romans and pro-Roman Britons were killed in these initial massacres, a staggering toll that sent shockwaves through the Roman Empire. The tide, however, eventually turned against Boudicca. Governor Suetonius Paulinus, having regrouped his forces, prepared for a decisive confrontation. The exact location of the final battle remains unknown, though it is believed to have taken place somewhere in the Roman Midlands, likely along Watling Street, a crucial Roman road. Despite being vastly outnumbered, the Roman legions, with their superior discipline, training, and equipment, proved to be an unstoppable force. Paulinus chose his ground carefully, selecting a narrow defile that negated the numerical advantage of the much larger but less organized Celtic horde. The Roman strategy was clear: form an unbreakable line, endure the initial Celtic charge and volleys of spears, then unleash their disciplined counterattack. On the other side, Boudicca, reportedly addressing her warriors from her chariot, appealed to their courage and their spirit of vengeance. The ensuing battle was a bloody and decisive Roman victory. The tightly packed Roman formation held firm, and once the Celts' initial frenzied charge lost momentum, the Roman legions, moving in disciplined ranks, advanced, cutting down the disorganized warriors. The Celtic forces, hampered by their own wagon train and families observing the battle from behind, found their escape routes blocked, turning the battlefield into a slaughter. The Roman accounts describe the carnage as immense, with thousands of Britons perishing. Boudicca's ultimate fate is uncertain. Some accounts state she poisoned herself to avoid capture, while others suggest she succumbed to illness. Her rebellion, though ultimately crushed, left an indelible mark on Roman imperial policy, forcing Rome to adopt a more conciliatory approach to governing Britain and reinforcing their presence with additional legions, proving that even in defeat, she exacted a high cost. The myth of Boudicca has evolved significantly over the centuries, particularly in Britain, transforming her from a defeated rebel into a powerful symbol of national identity and resistance against oppression. For centuries after the Roman withdrawal, her story faded into relative obscurity. However, during the Victorian era, as the British Empire reached its zenith and sought to define its own sense of historical grandeur, Boudicca was rediscovered and recast as a proto-imperial heroine, a strong, fierce queen who fought for her land. She became a patriotic icon, embodying the spirit of British defiance, a counterpoint to Roman imperial power. This interpretation culminated in the magnificent bronze statue of Boudicca mounted on her war chariot, commissioned by Prince Albert and unveiled in 1896 next to Westminster Bridge in London, directly opposite the Houses of Parliament. In more modern times, particularly during the 20th and 21st centuries, Boudicca's image has been further refashioned to represent a broader spectrum of ideals. She is celebrated as a feminist icon, a powerful female leader who refused to be subjugated. She embodies the spirit of environmental activism, fighting against the destruction of her natural world by an invasive power. Her story resonates with those who champion the rights of indigenous peoples against colonial forces. The contrast between the Roman perspective, which painted her as a barbarian queen leading a savage revolt, and the Celtic pride that sees her as a valiant freedom fighter, highlights the subjective nature of history and how narratives are shaped by power. Boudica, the warrior queen of the Iceni, continues to be a vibrant and resonant figure, demonstrating how a historical defeat can become a triumphant, enduring myth when reinterpreted through the lens of national identity and the timeless human yearning for liberty. From the fierce independence of Boudica, the warrior queen, we now delve into the heart of the Crusades, where a new and profoundly enigmatic force emerged, the Knights Templar. This powerful medieval military order, born from the fervor of religious conflict, rose to become one of the most influential and wealthiest organizations in Europe, paradoxically combining monastic vows with martial prowess. Their story, however, isn't just one of military might and religious zeal. It's steeped in mystery, intrigue, and whispers of hidden knowledge, culminating in a sudden and brutal downfall that continues to fuel conspiracy theories and captivate imagination centuries later. Were they simply devout guardians of pilgrims, or was there a darker, more heretical side to their immense power? This question lies at the core of their enduring enigma. The Knights Templar, formerly known as the Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon, originated in the aftermath of the First Crusade, founded in the year 1118 by a French knight named Hugues de Payens and 8 companions. Their initial, humble mission was as noble as it was practical: to protect European pilgrims journeying to the Holy Land following the Christian conquest of Jerusalem. The routes were perilous, rife with bandits and hostile factions, making safe passage a desperate need. These knights took monastic vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, yet wielded swords and lances in defense of the faithful, distinguishing themselves from traditional monastics and conventional knights. This unique blend of religious devotion and military service quickly gained them the endorsement of the Church, most notably through Pope Honorius II and the eloquent advocacy of Bernard of Clairvaux, who penned in praise of the new knighthood, legitimizing their dual role. Their distinctive white mantles adorned with a red cross became a universally recognized symbol of their unwavering commitment and fearsome reputation on the battlefield. As the Crusades progressed, the Templars' role expanded dramatically beyond mere protection. They became the vanguard of the Crusader armies, renowned for their discipline, courage, and fanatical devotion in battle. Their training was rigorous, their discipline legendary, and their willingness to fight to the death unquestioned. They were often the first into battle and the last to retreat, forming impregnable lines that absorbed enemy charges. Their contributions to the Crusader states were immense. They built formidable castles, served as military advisors, and commanded Crusader forces in major engagements. The rule of the Templars, a set of regulations governing their daily lives, dictated strict adherence to religious observance, communal living, and a rigid military hierarchy, fostering a cohesive and highly effective fighting force. Their reputation for unwavering piety combined with military effectiveness made them invaluable to the fragile Crusader kingdoms in the Middle East. Beyond their military prowess, the Knights Templar rapidly amassed immense wealth and unprecedented influence across Europe. As guardians of pilgrim routes and recipients of generous donations from grateful nobles and pious monarchs, they established a vast network of commanderies, castles, and agricultural estates. They innovated sophisticated financial practices that predate modern banking, introducing a system where pilgrims could deposit funds in Europe and withdraw them in the Holy Land, effectively creating a medieval form of travelers' checks. They owned fleets of ships, managed vast tracts of land, and lent money to kings and popes, becoming the principal bankers of medieval Europe. Their financial acumen and their international network made them indispensable to Europe's economy and political landscape. By the 13th century, their power rivaled that of many sovereign states, placing them in a uniquely privileged position, answerable only to the Pope. However, this very wealth and influence ultimately sowed the seeds of their destruction. As the Crusades faltered and the last Crusader strongholds in the Holy Land fell by the late 13th century, the Templars' initial raison d'etre diminished. Their vast riches, their secretiveness as a monastic order, and their loyalty solely to the Pope made them a tempting target for cash-strapped monarchs. The person who ultimately sealed their fate was King Philip IV of France, known as Philip the Fair, who was deeply indebted to the order. On Friday, October 13, 1307, acting on Philip's orders, Templars across France were simultaneously arrested. They were accused of heresy, idolatry, blasphemy, and a host of other shocking charges, including spitting on the cross, worshipping a demon head known as Baphomet, and homosexual acts. Under torture, many Templars confessed to these fabricated charges. The subsequent trials were a grotesque travesty of justice, orchestrated by Philip IV with the connivance of Pope Clement V, who ultimately yielded to Philip's immense pressure. Despite initial papal reluctance, the Templars were largely suppressed across Europe, their assets seized, and many of their leaders, including the last Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, were burned at the stake. De Molay's defiant curse from the flames, summoning both Philip and Clement to meet him before God within a year, reportedly came true, adding another layer of mystique to their demise. The suddenness and brutality of their suppression left a permanent mark on European history, giving rise to countless legends and conspiracy theories about their hidden treasures, secret knowledge, and their alleged unbroken lineage. The image of their distinctive red cross on a white background, once a symbol of holy war, now became intertwined with tales of betrayal and buried secrets. The enduring myths surrounding the Templars are perhaps even more captivating than their historical reality. The most prominent among these is the belief that they discovered and secretly guarded mystical artifacts, most famously the Holy Grail, the Cup from the Last Supper, and even the Ark of the Covenant during their time in the Holy Land. These theories suggest that their suppression was not merely about wealth, but about suppressing a profound secret that would destabilize the church or the existing power structures. Other myths include the idea that they secretly transported their vast riches to unknown locations before their arrest, leaving behind vast, undiscovered treasures. Tales of their survival and continued existence in secret societies, such as the Freemasons, also prevail, suggesting that their knowledge and traditions were passed down through the centuries, influencing later historical events. These narratives, while lacking concrete historical evidence, underscore the profound impact the Knights Templar had on the medieval imagination and continue to exert on popular culture, making them the ultimate enigmatic warriors whose story continues to blend the lines between history, legend, and tantalizing mystery. From the enigmatic Knights Templar, masters of both war and wealth, we now journey to ancient China, not to the battlefield, but to the strategic command tent where a different kind of power held sway, that of intellect. Here we encounter Zhuge Liang, a figure whose legend casts him not as a warrior of the sword, but as a warrior of the mind, a strategist whose tactical brilliance and foresight were so profound they often blurred the line between human genius and supernatural ability. His story, deeply entrenched in the Three Kingdoms period, a tumultuous era of civil war following the collapse of the Han Dynasty, revolves around his almost mythical intellectual prowess, elevating him to a status of revered deity in popular Chinese culture. Zhuge Liang entered the historical stage during a critical juncture in the 2nd and 3rd centuries CE, a time when China was fractured into three rival states, Cao Wei, Shu Han, and Eastern Wu. His early life was one of quiet scholarship until his eventual recruitment by Liu Bei, a descendant of the Han imperial family who was struggling to establish his own kingdom. Liu Bei famously sought Zhuge Liang out 3 times, demonstrating the immense respect and value placed upon his strategic wisdom, even before he proved himself on the battlefield. This initial interaction alone sets the tone for Zhuge Liang's legend, a humble scholar whose intellectual gifts were so profound that even a future emperor sought him out with persistent humility. Once enlisted, Zhuge Liang articulated his Longzhong plan, a grand strategy for unifying China that involved forming an alliance with Eastern Wu against the powerful Cao Wei, and eventually establishing a strong base in Jing province and later in Sichuan. This plan, articulated early in their relationship, demonstrated a foresight and strategic vision that would guide Liu Bei's nascent kingdom for decades. One of the most famous stratagems attributed to Zhuge Liang, and one that epitomizes his almost magical intellect, is borrowing the east wind during the Battle of Red Cliffs in 208 CE. This battle was a pivotal moment in the Three Kingdoms period, where the allied forces of Liu Bei and Sun Quan, ruler of Eastern Wu, vastly outnumbered, faced Cao Cao's massive northern fleet. The allied forces planned a fire attack on Cao Cao's ships, but the prevailing winds were blowing from the northwest, which would have carried the flames back toward their own fleet. According to the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, a historical novel that heavily romanticized this period, Zhuge Liang, using his knowledge of meteorology or perhaps even supernatural powers, predicted a temporary shift in wind direction to the southeast. He then performed a ceremony on a 7-star altar to summon this east wind. When the wind indeed shifted, the fire attack devastated Cao Cao's fleet, leading to a decisive Allied victory. While historical accounts suggest the wind shift was a natural phenomenon expertly anticipated, the romanticized version cemented Zhuge Liang's image as a master of both strategy and the elements, capable of bending nature to his will. Another celebrated stratagem highlighting his psychological genius is the empty fort strategy. This tale recounts an instance where Zhuge Liang, with a small, undermanned garrison, found himself facing a vastly superior enemy army led by Sima Yi, a formidable rival strategist. Instead of preparing for defense, Zhuge Liang ordered the city gates to be opened wide, had all the flags taken down, and stationed only a few soldiers to sweep the streets, and then calmly proceeded to play his guqin, a Chinese zither, on the city wall. Sima Yi, known for his caution and suspicion, arrived to find this bizarre scene. Fearing a hidden ambush or a trap set by Zhuge Liang, whom he knew to be incredibly cunning, Sima Yi ordered his troops to retreat, convinced that the empty fort was a cunning ruse. This stratagem, whether historical fact or clever storytelling, perfectly captures Zhuge Liang's reputation for deep psychological insight, his ability to manipulate his enemy's mind, and his audacious confidence even in the face of overwhelming odds. It was a victory won not with weapons but with wits. Beyond his direct military stratagems, Zhuge Liang is also credited with several ingenious inventions that enhanced the logistical and fighting capabilities of his Shu Han kingdom. Among these are the wooden ox and flowing horse, supposedly automated wooden vehicles used for transporting grain and supplies over difficult terrain. While their exact design and functionality remain a subject of debate, they represent Zhuge Liang's innovative spirit and his ability to leverage technology for strategic advantage. He also improved the repeating crossbow, making it a more effective weapon, and contributed to the design of the 8 diagrams formation, a complex military array designed to confuse and disorient enemy forces. These inventions and tactical innovations further solidified his image as a polymath, a brilliant mind capable of solving problems across various domains, not just on the battlefield. Zhuge Liang's legacy is a powerful example of how intelligence and foresight can be exaggerated over time, transforming a brilliant strategist into an almost mythical figure imbued with supernatural abilities. The Romance of the Three Kingdoms, in particular, elevated him to an almost divine status, presenting him as a master of divination, meteorology, and even magic, whose plans always succeeded because of his unmatched wisdom. This romanticized portrayal, rather than diminishing his historical importance, amplified it, making him a revered cultural icon whose name is synonymous with ultimate wisdom and strategic brilliance. Even today, in China, people jokingly refer to someone highly intelligent or cunning as another Zhuge Liang. His story illustrates the profound respect and awe that societies can hold for intellectual prowess, turning a historical figure into an enigmatic legend whose intelligence transcends the confines of human understanding, embodying the ultimate strategist whose mind was his most formidable weapon. From the strategic brilliance of Zhuge Liang, the warrior of the mind, we now travel to the verdant forests of medieval England, a realm where whispers of injustice and defiance gave birth to one of the most enduring and beloved figures in Western folklore, Robin Hood. His name, instantly recognizable, conjures images of a green-clad archer, a cunning outlaw, and a champion of the oppressed who famously redistributed wealth from the greedy rich to the struggling poor. But was Robin Hood a real person, a historical bandit whose deeds were amplified into legend, or is he merely the purest embodiment of a societal dream, a myth born from the deep-seated human yearning for justice and equality? This question forms the core of his enigmatic appeal, making him a complex tapestry woven from historical speculation, popular ballads, and the enduring power of a utopian ideal. The historical origins of Robin Hood are shrouded in ambiguity, making him a true enigma among legendary figures. Unlike many others we've discussed, there's no single, definitive historical record pointing to a specific individual named Robin Hood whose life precisely matches the later narratives. Early mentions of figures named Robehard or Robert Hard appear in judicial records from the 13th and 14th centuries, often used as generic aliases for petty criminals or outlaws. These references suggest that the name itself might have become a common term for someone living outside the law. Some scholars have attempted to link the legend to real-life individuals, such as Roger Godberd, a 13th century outlaw who operated in Sherwood Forest, or figures involved in the rebellions against King John or the Earl of Lancaster. However, none of these connections are conclusive. Rather, they offer tantalizing glimpses into a chaotic medieval landscape where the conditions for such a legend to flourish were certainly present. The very elusiveness of a single historical Robin Hood only adds to his mystique, allowing him to become a malleable symbol, adaptable to the needs and aspirations of successive generations. The true genesis of the Robin Hood legend lies not in official chronicles, but in the vibrant oral tradition and later, the popular ballads of medieval England. These early ballads, dating from the 14th and 15th centuries, are our most direct window into the evolving myth. In these initial portrayals, Robin Hood is often depicted as a yeoman, a free peasant or small landowner, rather than a dispossessed nobleman. He is a skilled archer, cunning and fiercely independent, primarily focused on poaching the king's deer and ambushing corrupt sheriffs or wealthy abbots. His primary motivation isn't necessarily a grand scheme of social justice for all, but a personal defiance against local authority and a desire for vengeance against those who wronged him or his companions. The emphasis is on his archery skills, his cunning tricks, and his loyal band of merry men who operate with a strict code of honor even if it falls outside the law. These early tales painted him as a local hero, a man who consistently outsmarted and humiliated the powerful, earning him the affection of the common folk who felt similarly oppressed. Over centuries, the Robin Hood myth underwent significant transformation, evolving from a simple outlaw tale into a powerful narrative of social justice and resistance against tyranny. During the 16th century, with the rise of the Tudor dynasty and the growing popularity of theatre, Robin Hood began to acquire more of the characteristics we associate with him today. He became explicitly a champion of the poor, robbing from the rich, especially corrupt clergy and oppressive noblemen to provide for the needy. His adversaries shifted from local sheriffs to the overarching tyrannical rule of King John, particularly during the absence of the rightful king, Richard I, the Lionheart. It was also around this time that key elements of his supporting cast became firmly established. The wise and loyal Little John, the jovial Friar Tuck, the swift-willed Scarlet, and the steadfast Maid Marian, who often served as his love interest and a symbol of feminine strength. The setting became firmly fixed in Sherwood Forest, a wild, untamed landscape that perfectly symbolized his freedom and defiance. By the 18th and 19th centuries, as England grappled with social inequalities brought about by the Industrial Revolution, the Robin Hood legend solidified its role as a powerful symbol of class struggle and egalitarian ideals. He became the embodiment of the common man's dream for a fairer society, a figure who dared to challenge the established order and redistribute wealth through direct action. This era saw the myth adapted into countless plays, novels, and children's stories, each iteration emphasizing his moral righteousness and his role as a protector of the innocent. His transformation from a historical curiosity to an enduring cultural icon reveals how societies use myths to articulate their anxieties and aspirations. He wasn't just a folk hero, he became a moral compass, a wish-fulfillment fantasy for those yearning for justice in an unjust world. The fluidity of the Robin Hood myth is perhaps its most fascinating aspect. Lacking a rigid historical anchor, his story has been continuously reinterpreted and reshaped to suit the socio-political climate of different eras. In some versions, he is a Saxon fighting against Norman oppression. In others, he is a loyal subject of Richard the Lionheart, battling the corruption of King John. Over time, his motives have become more altruistic, his actions increasingly noble, and his image progressively more heroic. This adaptability is precisely why his legend has persisted for so long and resonates so deeply across cultures. From medieval ballads to Hollywood blockbusters, Robin Hood remains a captivating figure, a testament to the enduring power of a simple idea, that justice can prevail even if it means bending the rules, and that true heroism often lies in standing up for those who cannot stand up for themselves. He is an enigma whose power lies in his timeless message rather than his historical certainty, forever wandering the greenwood, ready to challenge the powerful on behalf of the weak. From the legendary outlaws of England, we now journey to the austere and disciplined world of ancient Sparta, a society so utterly devoted to the art of war that its very name has become synonymous with rigor, self-discipline, and unyielding military might. At the heart of this formidable civilization lay the Agoge, Sparta's unique and notoriously brutal state-sponsored education and training system. While modern popular culture often paints a highly romanticized, almost superhuman picture of Spartan warriors, figures like Leonidas and his 300, whom we discussed earlier, the truth behind the Agoge is a fascinating blend of historical record, later idealizations, and an unwavering commitment to forging the perfect soldier. But how much of what we think we know about Spartan training is based on fact, and how much on myth? The Agoge was not merely a military academy. It was a holistic, compulsory system designed to mold every male Spartan citizen from childhood into a disciplined, obedient, and physically formidable warrior, utterly loyal to the state. Boys were taken from their families at the tender age of 7, beginning a rigorous regimen that would last until they were 30 years old, immersing them entirely in community life and state service. This early separation was critical, ensuring that familial ties remained secondary to loyalty to Sparta. Their lives became a perpetual cycle of physical training, combat drills, endurance tests, and lessons in obedience. They were taught to read and write, but only to the extent necessary, with emphasis always placed on laconic speech, brief, to-the-point communication and practical skills over intellectual pursuits. The primary goal was to strip away individuality and foster an unbreakable sense of communal identity, ensuring that each Spartan was a cog in the formidable war machine that was their state. Life in the Agoge was intentionally harsh, designed to habituate young Spartans to hardship, pain, and deprivation. They wore minimal clothing even in winter and were given meager rations, often deliberately insufficient to encourage them to forage, steal, or learn to subsist on little. This wasn't merely about toughening them up physically, it was also a psychological strategy. By forcing them to be resourceful and occasionally steal, the system fostered cunning and stealth, essential traits for a warrior. If caught, however, they were punished not for the theft itself, but for their incompetence in being discovered, reinforcing the importance of skill and discretion. Such practices, while seemingly cruel, were intended to strip away fear of suffering and instill an unshakable resilience, preparing them for the brutal realities of ancient warfare where survival often depended on enduring extreme conditions. The physical training was relentless. Boys engaged in wrestling, running, jumping, and disc throwing, all designed to build strength, agility, and stamina. Combat drills focused on perfecting the phalanx formation, the backbone of Spartan military dominance. They learned to fight as a cohesive unit, relying on the shield of their comrade as much as their own, understanding that collective strength superseded individual prowess. The popular image of Spartans as supremely muscled, individual combatants often misses this crucial point. Their true strength lay in their collective discipline and their ability to move as one, an unyielding wall of spears and shields. This rigorous training was supplemented by musical and choral education, not for aesthetic pleasure, but to instill a sense of rhythm, coordination, and communal spirit, reinforcing the cohesion essential for military formations. Among the most controversial and enigmatic aspects of the Agoge was the Crypteia, a period of secret service that some scholars believe was a rite of passage for young Spartans. During the Crypteia, selected youths were sent into the countryside armed only with a dagger, tasked with surviving off the land and, chillingly, with killing helots, the enslaved population that formed the agricultural backbone of Spartan society. This practice, if it occurred as described by ancient sources, served multiple purposes. It provided extreme survival training, honed stealth and assassination skills, and most importantly, instilled terror among the helots, acting as a brutal form of population control. The historical debate over the exact nature and frequency of the Crypteia adds to the mystique of Spartan brutality, portraying them not just as disciplined warriors but as a ruthless internal security force, constantly maintaining their dominance over a restive, subjugated population. The image of Spartan discipline and bravery was not merely a historical reality. It was carefully cultivated and mythologized both by the Spartans themselves and by later admiring cultures, most notably the Romans. The story of Thermopylae became the ultimate testament to their unyielding courage. The emphasis on their physical perfection, their laconic wit, and their unwavering dedication to the state made them an ideal for subsequent military cultures. However, later idealizations often glossed over the system's darker aspects: the brutal suppression of the helots, the often extreme deprivation, and the chilling aspects of the Crypteia to present a sanitized, heroic narrative. Archaeological finds from Laconia, the Spartan homeland, offer glimpses into their material culture, revealing a society that, while militarily focused, also had its own forms of art and civic life, often contrasting with the stark images presented by later writers. Ultimately, the Spartan Agoge was a system that undeniably forged formidable warriors, but the myth of the perfect warrior training is a complex one, reflecting both the historical realities of a society utterly dedicated to war and the powerful human tendency to idealize and romanticize ultimate discipline. From the disciplined, often brutal, training of Spartan warriors, we now set sail towards a different kind of warrior, one whose legend truly embodies the spirit of an age, Harald Hardrada. Often known as the last great Viking, Harald Sigurdsson, King of Norway, lived a life so extraordinarily dramatic that it reads more like an epic saga than historical fact. His journey, spanning from the frozen fjords of Norway to the sun-drenched palaces of Byzantium and culminating on the muddy fields of England, encapsulates the unyielding ambition, ravenous curiosity, and fierce martial prowess that defined the Viking Age. But was he truly the last of his kind, or merely a historical figure whose grand narrative perfectly ended an era? This question invites us to explore the blurred lines between historical record and the heroic sagas that glorified his incredible life. Harold's early life was marked by both tragedy and incredible resilience. Born around 1015, he was the half-brother of King Olaf II of Norway, later Saint Olaf. At the tender age of 15, Harold fought alongside Olaf at the Battle of Stiklestad in 1030, a pivotal moment where Olaf was killed and Harold himself was wounded. This crushing defeat and the subsequent exile set Harold on a path of adventure that would span 15 years and take him across half the known world. Instead of fading into obscurity, the young Harold chose a mercenary's life, first fleeing to Kievan Rus, a loose federation of East Slavic and Finno-Ugric peoples ruled by Vikings, where he served in the armies of Yaroslav the Wise, Grand Prince of Kiev. Here he honed his military skills, participated in various campaigns, and reportedly amassed considerable wealth, demonstrating a cunning and adaptability that went far beyond mere brute force. This period was his crucible, transforming him from a defeated princeling into a seasoned warrior and a strategic thinker, preparing him for even greater adventures to come. It was in the Byzantine Empire, however, that Harold truly cemented his legend as an unparalleled warrior. From around 1034 to 1042, he commanded the famed Varangian Guard, an elite unit of the Byzantine Emperor's personal bodyguards, composed primarily of Norsemen and other North European warriors. The Varangian Guard was known for its fierce loyalty, its distinctive battle axes, and its unmatched fighting ability, a reputation Harold significantly enhanced. During his service, he participated in numerous campaigns across the Mediterranean, fighting in Sicily, North Africa, and the Middle East, gaining invaluable experience in large-scale warfare against diverse enemies. He masterminded daring raids, crushed rebellions, and accumulated immense riches, sending vast amounts of gold and silver back to Kievan Rus for safekeeping. Legends surrounding his time in Byzantium include tales of incredible feats of strength, tactical brilliance, and even his affair with a Byzantine empress. He was said to have perfected siege warfare, mastered naval combat, and consistently emerged victorious from seemingly impossible situations. His time in Byzantium transformed him from a successful mercenary into a charismatic and immensely wealthy commander with a global understanding of warfare and political intrigue. After his long and illustrious career in the East, Harold returned to Scandinavia, a vastly different man from the defeated youth who had fled. He leveraged his immense wealth, his martial reputation, and his strategic genius to reclaim his birthright. First, he ruled jointly with his nephew Magnus the Good, and upon Magnus's death, Harold became the sole king of Norway. His reign was characterized by ambitious domestic policies, including the standardization of coinage and the development of towns, but also by constant warfare. He waged a protracted 19-year war with Denmark, driven by a relentless ambition to claim the Danish throne. This period showcased his unyielding determination and his willingness to pursue his goals with relentless vigor, even if it meant prolonged conflict. His experiences in the sophisticated Byzantine court had given him a broader perspective on kingship, combining traditional Viking warrior ethos with a more centralized, strategic approach to governance and power. Harald Hardrada's dramatic life reached its climax in 1066, a year that forever altered the course of English history. Sensing an opportunity amidst the succession crisis following the death of Edward the Confessor, Harold launched a massive invasion of England, allied with Tostig Godwinson, the exiled brother of the newly crowned English king Harold Godwinson. Harold's ambition was clear: to seize the English throne and unite the crowns of Norway, Denmark, and England under his rule, effectively re-establishing a vast North Sea empire. His invasion force, numbering hundreds of ships and thousands of seasoned warriors, landed in northern England, initially achieving victories, including the Battle of Fulford. However, King Harold Godwinson, displaying incredible speed and determination, force marched his English army northward, covering nearly 200 miles in just 5 days. The two forces met at the Battle of Stamford Bridge. The Battle of Stamford Bridge on September 25, 1066, marked Harold Hardrada's final dramatic stand. It was a brutal, hard-fought engagement. The English caught the Vikings by surprise, many of whom were without their full armor due to the warm weather. Despite this, the Norsemen formed a formidable shield wall and fought with their characteristic ferocity. Legend has it that a single Norwegian berserker held the narrow bridge against the entire English army for an extended period, killing 40 men before finally being dispatched. Harold himself fought bravely, reportedly leading from the front. However, in the thick of the battle, he was struck in the throat by an arrow and killed, bringing an end to his extraordinary life. His death, just weeks before William the Conqueror's invasion at Hastings, effectively spelled the end of the Viking Age as a period of major political and military expansion. The legacy of Harold Hardrada, the last great Viking, is a compelling blend of historical fact and the heroic sagas that elevated him to legendary status. His life story, meticulously documented in the Norse sagas and corroborated by Byzantine and English accounts, captures the very essence of the Viking spirit of exploration, conquest, and boundless ambition. He was a man who truly saw the world as his oyster, driven by a thirst for adventure, wealth, and power. His journey from a teenage exile to a mercenary commander, a Byzantine general, and ultimately King of Norway who died invading England is a testament to an indomitable will and an extraordinary capacity for transformation. He bridged the gap between the traditional Viking raider and a more sophisticated, globalized medieval ruler. His death at Stamford Bridge, swiftly followed by the Norman conquest, truly marked the decline of Viking influence on the grand stage of European history, solidifying his image as the last, magnificent roar of an era defined by longships and battle axes. From the dramatic, global adventures of Harold Hardrada, the embodiment of a Viking age drawing to a close, we now turn our attention to a different kind of warrior ethos, one that is perhaps even more deeply ingrained in popular imagination, yet equally shrouded in misunderstanding: the samurai code, or Bushido. Often translated as the way of the warrior, Bushido is frequently presented as an ancient, rigid, and unyielding set of principles that governed every aspect of the samurai's life, a moral compass guiding them toward loyalty, honor, and self-sacrifice. However, the true history of Bushido is far more nuanced, a complex tapestry woven over centuries, with many of its most cherished tenets being formally codified much later than the classical samurai era, particularly during the relatively peaceful Edo period. Understanding Bushido requires us to peel back layers of idealization and confront the often brutal and pragmatic realities of feudal Japan's warfare and politics, contrasting the romanticized virtues with the harsh exigencies of a warrior's life. The foundational principles that would eventually coalesce into Bushido began to emerge during Japan's tumultuous medieval period, roughly from the 12th to the 16th centuries, a time of constant civil war and shifting allegiances. During this era, the warrior class, the samurai, rose to prominence, and virtues like courage, martial skill, and loyalty to one's lord were indeed paramount for survival and success. However, these were often pragmatic virtues born of necessity in a dog-eat-dog world. Loyalty was frequently conditional, shifting as lords rose and fell, and betrayal was not uncommon if it meant preserving one's clan or advancing one's position. The emphasis was more on practical effectiveness in battle, and the honor derived from individual prowess. Early samurai were not necessarily bound by the rigid philosophical framework that later generations would idealize. Their code was largely unwritten, a collection of practical rules and customary behaviors passed down through generations, often tailored to the immediate needs of their specific clan and the prevailing political climate. Much of what we now recognize as Bushido was formalized and deeply articulated during the Edo period, from the early 17th century to the mid-19th century. This was a time of unprecedented peace under the Tokugawa shogunate after centuries of civil strife. With battlefields largely quiet, the samurai class, no longer primarily engaged in warfare, transformed from warriors into administrators, bureaucrats, and cultural arbiters. It was in this new context that thinkers and scholars began to codify the virtues of the samurai, drawing on Zen Buddhism, Confucianism, and Shintoism to create a comprehensive moral and ethical system. Confucian ideals, in particular, emphasized loyalty, filial piety, duty, and self-cultivation, all of which became central to this newly articulated Bushido. Works like Hagakure, written by Yamamoto Tsunetomo in the early 18th century, became influential texts defining the ideal samurai way of life. Hagakure, meaning hidden leaves, famously states, "The way of the samurai is found in death." This emphasis on the readiness to die, on absolute loyalty even unto death, and on maintaining one's honor above all else became a cornerstone of the idealized Bushido. Yet, the gap between this idealized Bushido and the lived reality of many samurai, especially during the more chaotic periods, was often vast. While the Edo period solidified the philosophical underpinnings of Bushido, earlier samurai life was far more pragmatic. Betrayal, opportunism, and ruthless elimination of rivals were common tactics in the Sengoku Jidai, the Warring States period. Daimyo, or feudal lords, frequently shifted alliances based on strategic advantage rather than unwavering loyalty, and samurai often followed suit. The famous story of the 47 Ronin, while a powerful example of idealized loyalty, represents an act that, in its own time, sparked considerable debate and controversy precisely because it challenged the established legal order, even as it upheld a certain ideal of samurai honor. The romantic image of the lone, honorable samurai fighter often overshadows the political machinations, the large-scale logistics of feudal armies, and the economic pressures that shaped their decisions. Furthermore, the practice of Bushido was not always about noble combat. While texts like Miyamoto Musashi's The Book of Five Rings, Go-Rin no Sho, written mid-17th century, delve into the philosophy of strategy and combat, they also reveal a pragmatic approach to defeating opponents, emphasizing adaptability and deception. Duels, while often portrayed as honorable exchanges, were frequently brutal, with ambushes and dirty tricks not uncommon. Samurai engaged in psychological warfare, espionage, and political assassinations. The concept of honor could also be rigidly oppressive, leading to practices like seppuku, ritual suicide, to avoid capture or shame, even when facing impossible odds, contributing to the dark mystique of the code. This emphasis on honor and reputation meant that even minor slights could escalate into deadly confrontations, painting a picture of a society where outward appearance and adherence to a strict code were paramount, sometimes at the expense of human life. The enduring myth of a singular, unchanging Bushido has had a profound impact on both Japanese national identity and the global perception of the samurai. It was further reinforced and repurposed during the late 19th and early 20th centuries, particularly during the Meiji Restoration and the rise of Japanese nationalism. Bushido was then presented as an ancient, immutable code, a spiritual foundation for the nation's military and moral strength, used to justify imperial expansion and to inspire ultimate sacrifice in soldiers. This modern reinterpretation often downplayed the complex historical development of the code and exaggerated its ancient origins, creating a powerful narrative of uniquely Japanese warrior virtue. The visuals associated with samurai, their distinctive, ornate armor, the elegant curves of the katana, and woodblock prints depicting their fierce duels, all contribute to this romanticized image, masking the underlying realities of their lives. The ideal of Bushido, with its emphasis on loyalty, honor, discipline, and a stoic acceptance of death, remains a compelling and powerful one, but it is crucial to remember that it is a carefully constructed ideal, a product of centuries of philosophical reflection and political necessity, rather than a timeless, static, and universally applied set of rules throughout all of samurai history. From the philosophical and often idealized way of the warrior in feudal Japan, we now journey to a very different yet equally formidable elite fighting force whose legend was forged in the crucible of multicultural empire, the Varangian Guard. These weren't samurai bound by a code, but rather elite mercenaries, primarily Norsemen and later Anglo-Saxons, who served as the personal bodyguards and shock troops of the Byzantine emperors in Constantinople. Their story is a captivating blend of raw Viking ferocity, unwavering loyalty to their golden-clad emperors, and a unique cultural synthesis that earned them a mythical status as unstoppable warriors whose presence alone could turn the tide of battle, often wielding their distinctive battle axes with devastating effect. The origins of the Varangian Guard lie in the late 10th century, specifically in the year 988. Following a crucial alliance with the Byzantine Emperor Basil II, Vladimir the Great, Prince of Kiev, converted to Christianity and, as part of their agreement, sent 6,000 Norse warriors to assist the emperor. These battle-hardened Vikings, already renowned for their prowess and fearlessness, proved invaluable to Basil, helping him suppress rebellions and secure his throne. Recognizing their exceptional discipline, loyalty as they had no local ties or political ambitions within the Byzantine court, and sheer fighting capability, Basil II formalized their position, establishing them as the emperor's elite personal guard. This was a revolutionary concept, to rely on foreign, pagan, or newly Christianized warriors rather than native Byzantines for the most critical security detail, a testament to their fearsome reputation. What truly set the Varangian Guard apart was their unwavering loyalty, a trait often lacking in the Byzantine court, which was prone to political intrigue and palace coups. As foreigners, the Varangians had no allegiances to Byzantine factions or local nobility. Their loyalty was solely to the emperor, from whom they received their pay, privileges, and vast plunder from military campaigns. This made them entirely trustworthy in the emperor's eyes, a reliable shield against internal threats. Their devotion was reportedly so absolute that they would fight to the last man in defense of their sovereign. They were also famously disciplined, eschewing the excesses sometimes seen in other mercenary groups. Their distinctive appearance, particularly their towering height and their preference for the formidable Danish axe, a two-handed weapon capable of cleaving through armor and men alike, made them instantly recognizable and struck fear into the hearts of their enemies. Byzantine mosaics and illuminated manuscripts from the era often depict them proudly, standing guard with their axes, emphasizing their unique role and imposing presence. The Varangian Guard was not just ceremonial, they were the emperor's elite shock troops deployed in the most crucial and desperate battles. Their tactics were straightforward but devastating, a disciplined, irresistible charge, often led by the emperor himself, acting as a human battering ram against enemy lines. They would stand firm where others broke, serving as an unyielding anchor for the Byzantine army. Their participation in battles across the vast Byzantine Empire from the Balkans to Syria solidified their reputation. Harald Hardrada, whom we discussed earlier, gained much of his legendary military experience commanding the Varangian Guard for years, further adding to their mystique. Their presence on the battlefield was often a psychological weapon in itself, prompting enemy forces to reconsider their resolve. When Harald returned to Norway, much of the wealth he amassed came from his service in the Guard, a testament to the fact that their loyalty was well rewarded by the emperor. Following the Norman conquest of England in 1066, the Varangian Guard saw a significant influx of Anglo-Saxons, many of whom were displaced nobles and warriors fleeing William the Conqueror's rule. These Anglo-Saxons, already renowned for their own effective shield wall tactics and their loyalty, seamlessly integrated into the Guard, further diversifying its ranks while maintaining its core martial prowess. This shift meant that by the 12th century, the Varangian Guard became a blend of Norse and Anglo-Saxon warriors, preserving a unique cultural heritage, a fighting force that spoke Old Norse or Early English within the Greek-speaking heart of the Byzantine Empire. Their long journey from the cold north to the sophisticated, bustling streets of Constantinople, often depicted on maps tracing their routes across Europe, symbolizes the remarkable reach of Byzantine power and the globalized nature of medieval warfare. The mythical status of the Varangian Guard grew from their consistent performance in battle, their fierce loyalty, and the awe they inspired among both allies and enemies. They were seen as exotic, almost superhuman figures, embodying the brute strength of the North combined with the discipline of the Byzantine military machine. Their unique blend of barbarian ferocity and an almost monastic devotion to their emperor made them figures of fascination. Tales of their exploits, often embellished, spread across Europe and the Middle East, solidifying their image as the ultimate bodyguards and the emperor's sword arm. The Varangian Guard continued to serve the Byzantine emperors for centuries, declining only with the gradual weakening of the Byzantine Empire itself, ultimately dissolving after the fall of Constantinople to the Ottoman Turks in 1453. Their legend, however, endures, a testament to a unique fighting force that bridged cultures and eras, forever etched into history as the emperor's loyal, axe-wielding, and truly unstoppable warriors. From the formidable, axe-wielding Varangian Guard, whose loyalty was bought with Byzantine gold, we journey high into the majestic yet unforgiving Himalayas to encounter a fighting force whose legend is built not on mercenary service, but on an inherent, almost mythical bravery, the Gurkhas. These Nepalese soldiers, renowned for their unwavering courage, fierce loyalty, and their iconic, forward-curving kukri knives, have carved out a fearsome reputation on battlefields across the globe, serving with unparalleled distinction in the British and Indian armies for over 2 centuries. Their myth, far from being an ancient tale, is a living legend forged in the crucible of modern warfare and continues to be written with every act of extraordinary valor. The origins of the Gurkhas as a cohesive fighting force trace back to the unification of Nepal in the mid-18th century under King Prithvi Narayan Shah. The Gurkhas themselves belong to various ethnic groups from the mountainous regions of Nepal, including the Gurungs, Magas, Rais, and Limbus, all known for their resilience and martial traditions. Their first major encounter with the British came during the Anglo-Nepalese War of 1814 to 1816. Despite being significantly outnumbered and outgunned by the mighty British East India Company, the Gurkhas fought with such ferocity, skill, and tenacity that they earned the profound respect of their adversaries. Their disciplined fighting spirit and unwavering determination in the face of superior firepower left a lasting impression. It was during this conflict that the British first witnessed the deadly effectiveness of the kukri, the traditional Nepalese knife, a heavy, inwardly curved blade used for both utility and combat, which became synonymous with Gurkha warriors. Their indomitable spirit impressed the British so much that, upon the war's conclusion, they began recruiting Gurkhas into their own forces, a tradition that endures to this day. Since their recruitment into the British and later the Indian armies, Gurkha soldiers have participated in virtually every major conflict of the last 2 centuries, from the Sepoy Mutiny in India to the trenches of both world wars, the Falklands War, and more recent engagements in Afghanistan. Their fighting philosophy is captured in their famous motto, "Better to die than be a coward." This isn't just a saying, it's a deeply ingrained ethos that guides their actions in battle. They are renowned for their discipline, their physical toughness, and their ability to operate effectively in extreme conditions, whether in the freezing mountain passes of the Himalayas or the scorching deserts of the Middle East. Stories of their individual bravery are plentiful, Gurkhas charging machine gun nests with their conquerors, carrying wounded comrades for miles through treacherous terrain, and holding their ground against overwhelming odds have become part of military lore, earning them an impressive tally of Victoria Crosses, the highest award for gallantry in the British Armed Forces, among numerous other commendations. The kukri knife itself has become almost a mythical extension of the Gurkha soldier. More than just a weapon, it is a tool of daily life, used for everything from clearing brush to preparing food. But in combat, the kukri is wielded with terrifying efficiency, particularly in close quarters engagements. The Gurkha's skill with this blade is legendary, leading to tales of decapitations and dismemberments that have struck fear into the hearts of their enemies. There is a popular, though largely apocryphal, saying that once a kukri is drawn in anger, it must draw blood before it can be sheathed, a testament to its lethal reputation. This iconic weapon, combined with their stoic resolve and fierce determination, contributes significantly to their formidable image, portraying them as silent, deadly warriors who are utterly fearless once committed to the fight. This has often led to the kukri being associated with superhuman feats of strength and precision, underscoring the Gurkhas' almost mystical connection to their ancestral weapon. The Gurkhas' enduring legacy is a testament to their unwavering loyalty and their unparalleled fighting spirit. Beyond their martial prowess, they are also celebrated for their humility, their cheerful demeanor, and their unwavering discipline away from the battlefield. They embody a rare combination of fierce warrior and honorable gentleman, earning them respect from allies and former adversaries alike. Their continued service, adapting to modern warfare while retaining their unique traditions, highlights a living myth, a fighting force whose reputation for courage and skill has not diminished with time, but rather grown stronger with each new challenge. The Gurkhas are not just a historical footnote, they are a vibrant, ongoing legacy of fearless determination, proving that true courage transcends eras and battles, remaining as sharp and formidable as the edge of a well-honed kukri. From the enduring courage of the Gurkhas, whose legend is etched in their formidable kukri, we now thunder across the plains of Eastern Europe to encounter a cavalry force so awe-inspiring and visually striking that they seem to descend from another realm, the Polish winged hussars. Their very appearance, with those towering, feathered wings, was designed to strike terror, and their devastating impact on battlefields across the 16th and 17th centuries cemented their status as almost mythical figures, representing the pinnacle of cavalry warfare. They were not just soldiers, they were a thunderclap of steel and feathers, capable of shattering enemy lines that were considered impregnable, leaving legends in their wake. The hussars were not always winged. Their origins trace back to the light cavalry units, often Serbian or Hungarian, that served in Poland and Lithuania in the 15th century. These early hussars were quick, agile, and effective in skirmishes, primarily using lances and shields. However, over time, as military tactics evolved and armor became heavier, the Polish hussars transformed. By the mid-16th century, they began to adopt heavier armor, becoming a formidable shock cavalry. It was in the late 16th and particularly the 17th century that they fully developed into the iconic winged hussars, the heavy cavalry unit that would dominate European battlefields. This evolution reflected a conscious decision to create an elite, specialized force capable of delivering decisive blows, a strategic response to the changing nature of warfare in Eastern Europe, where cavalry charges were still paramount. What truly set the winged hussars apart was their unique and terrifying appearance. Imagine the sight: a squadron of fully armored riders, each carrying a long, hollowed-out lance from 8 to 20 feet in length, often topped with a small, fluttering pennon. But most strikingly, from their backs or even from their saddles, sprouted elaborately constructed wings. These wings were typically made of wood, covered in eagle, ostrich, or swan feathers, and were often attached to the back of the saddle or directly to the hussar's back armor. The exact purpose of these wings remains a subject of debate among historians. Some argue they were purely psychological, designed to create a terrifying, whistling sound during the charge, unsettling enemy horses and infantry with a sound like a rushing wind or a predator's wings. Others suggest they offered some protection against saber cuts from the rear, or even prevented enemy lassos from unhorsing the riders. Regardless of their practical utility, their visual impact was undeniable. They made the hussars appear larger, more menacing, and utterly otherworldly, like avenging angels or demons. This formidable aesthetic was combined with gleaming plate armor, often decorated with animal pelts, leopard or tiger skins, and a distinctive helmet, the karasna, which further emphasized their powerful, almost beast-like presence. The winged hussars' tactical doctrine was built around the terrifying all-or-nothing charge. Unlike other cavalry of the era that might engage in prolonged melees, the hussars aimed for a single, decisive blow. Their long lances, often longer than those used by their Western European counterparts, allowed them to reach enemy infantry and cavalry formations before their opponents could effectively counterattack. The hollowed-out design of the lances made them lighter than they appeared, allowing for quicker manipulation while still packing a tremendous punch. After the initial impact, if the charge didn't break the enemy line, they would quickly transition to their secondary weapons, the deadly saber, the straight rapier, and often short carbines or pistols. Their armor, though heavy, was designed for maximum protection while still allowing for mobility on horseback. The combination of their terrifying appearance, their long, shattering lances, and their subsequent transition to close-quarters combat made their charges almost unstoppable, turning tightly packed infantry squares into chaos and routing enemy cavalry with brutal efficiency. Their legacy is cemented by a series of legendary victories across Eastern Europe, defining the golden age of Polish-Lithuanian military power. They played a crucial role in defending the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth against invasions from the Ottoman Empire, Muscovy, and Sweden. One of their most famous triumphs was the Battle of Kirchholm in 1605, where a much smaller contingent of hussars utterly routed a numerically superior Swedish army. However, their most iconic victory, and one that resonates deeply in European history, was the relief of Vienna in 1683. The Ottoman Empire, at the height of its power, had laid siege to Vienna, threatening to open the gates to Central Europe. The city was on the brink of falling when a massive relief force, led by Polish King Jan Sobieski III, arrived. It was here, during the largest cavalry charge in history, that the winged hussars, numbering several thousands, spearheaded the assault, thundering down the Kollenberg hills. Their charge broke the Ottoman siege lines, scattering their forces and forcing an end to the threat against Vienna, a victory widely seen as turning the tide against Ottoman expansion in Europe. The winged hussars ultimately faded from prominence with the advent of more advanced firearms and artillery that made massed cavalry charges increasingly suicidal. However, their legend endures not just as a historical military unit, but as a powerful symbol of Polish national pride, bravery, and defiance. Their almost fantastical appearance, captured in countless historical paintings and modern reconstructions, makes them unique among the great warrior traditions. The sheer audacity of their design, those feathered wings on warriors of steel, speaks to a confidence and flair that transcended mere military pragmatism. They were a sight to behold, a force of nature on the battlefield, embodying a blend of martial effectiveness and theatrical terror that forever etched them into the annals of military history as the very embodiment of the cavalry of the apocalypse. From the thunderous charges of the winged hussars, we now plunge into the primal, terrifying world of the Viking berserkers, legendary warriors whose very name conjures images of unbridled fury, superhuman strength, and a chilling imperviousness to pain. Clad in bear or wolf hides, foaming at the mouth and seemingly immune to steel, these figures loom large in Norse sagas and historical accounts, a primal force on the battlefield. But how much of this terrifying image is historical reality, and how much is the powerful, almost mythical, exaggeration born from fear and awe? The enigma of the berserker lies in dissecting their frenzied state, exploring the possible explanations behind their extraordinary behavior, and understanding how their reputation became a weapon in itself. The term berserker itself is steeped in their fearsome appearance, traditionally interpreted in Old Norse as bare shirt or bare shirt, implying a warrior who fought without armor, relying only on their raw ferocity. Accounts from historical texts and sagas describe these warriors entering a trance-like state before battle, characterized by uncontrollable trembling, chattering teeth, and foaming at the mouth. As the fury intensified, they would reportedly gnaw on their shields, letting out guttural roars and howls that chilled the blood of their enemies. Once the berserker state fully took hold, they would unleash a terrifying, almost indiscriminate violence, attacking friends and foes alike, seemingly oblivious to pain or injury. Their strength was said to be phenomenal, enabling them to overturn rocks, uproot trees, and smash through lines of armed men with terrifying ease. This was not just a fighting style, it was a psychological weapon designed to instill profound terror and break the morale of opposing forces before the actual combat even began. The question of what caused this berserker rage has fascinated historians and scholars for centuries. One prominent theory, widely debated but captivating, suggests the use of psychoactive substances, most notably the hallucinogenic mushroom Amanita muscaria. Advocates of this theory point to the mushroom's known effects, which include altered states of consciousness, increased physical strength, a diminished perception of pain, and a tendency toward aggressive, manic behavior, all symptoms aligning with historical descriptions of berserkers. Others propose different fungi or even large quantities of alcohol, which could indeed lower inhibitions and increase aggression. However, direct archaeological or textual evidence definitively proving the widespread use of these substances by berserkers is scarce, leading many scholars to view this theory with caution, recognizing that while possible, it remains largely speculative. Alternative explanations for the berserker state lean toward psychological and physiological factors. Some suggest that the berserkers suffered from a form of mental illness, such as epilepsy or a specific psychiatric condition, which manifested as uncontrollable rage in high-stress situations. Another compelling theory points to extreme psychological conditioning, a form of self-hypnosis or autosuggestion, where intense ritualistic preparations before battle, chanting, drumming, hyperventilating, could induce a dissociative state of mind. This psychological switch could allow warriors to temporarily override their fear and pain responses, entering a heightened state of aggression. The sheer adrenaline surge experienced in battle, combined with years of rigorous training and a cultural emphasis on fearless combat, could also contribute to such a state, pushing the human body and mind beyond their normal limits. The act of wearing animal skins, howling like beasts, and performing pre-battle rituals would certainly contribute to a profound psychological transformation for the berserker themselves and create a terrifying spectacle for their enemies. Regardless of its exact physiological or psychological cause, the terrifying reputation of the Viking berserker was undoubtedly a powerful weapon. Their frenzied attacks were often used as shock tactics, designed to break enemy ranks and spread panic. Commanders would deploy them at crucial moments, knowing that their sheer ferocity could shatter even the most disciplined formations. The sagas are replete with tales of berserkers single-handedly routing entire companies of men, their opponents fleeing in terror rather than facing such an unhinged force. This reputation, cultivated through both real acts of ferocity and exaggerated folklore, served as a form of psychological warfare, making their mere presence on the battlefield a chilling prospect. Grave finds across Scandinavia, including specialized axes and other weapons, alongside artistic renditions of warriors clad in animal pelts, hint at the historical reality of such elite, terrifying fighters. However, the berserkers' untamed nature also posed significant challenges. Their indiscriminate rage meant they were as dangerous to their allies as to their enemies. Reports suggest that once the battle subsided, or if they survived the initial frenzy, berserkers would often collapse into a state of exhaustion, weakness, and vulnerability, sometimes even becoming ill. Their unpredictable behavior eventually led to their decline. By the 12th century, laws were enacted and the church began to condemn berserkers, viewing their behavior as pagan and demonic, effectively marginalizing them. The very qualities that made them so formidable also made them difficult to control in a more organized society. Thus, the berserker faded from the historical battlefield, but their legend only grew, transforming from terrifying reality into a captivating myth. The image of the roaring, shield-gnawing Viking, impervious to pain, continues to embody a primal, untamed warrior spirit, forever blurring the lines between human ferocity and mythological invincibility. From the untamed fury of the Viking berserkers, whose power stemmed from a primal, almost magical rage, we now step into the heart of the most powerful empire of the ancient world, Rome. Here we encounter a different kind of elite warrior, one whose power was not just physical but deeply political, and whose legend is far more complex than that of mere battlefield prowess, the Praetorian Guard. These were not simply the personal bodyguards of the Roman emperor. They were a formidable force whose loyalty was often a fickle thing, capable of both safeguarding and savagely overthrowing the very rulers they were sworn to protect. Their story is a captivating enigma, blending military might with Machiavellian intrigue, making them both indispensable and terrifyingly dangerous. The origins of the Praetorian Guard trace back to the Republican era, where they served as the bodyguards of Roman generals. However, their true power and legendary status began with Emperor Augustus, the first Roman emperor, who recognized the necessity of a dedicated imperial guard. Augustus, ever the shrewd politician, carefully cultivated their image, presenting them as an elite, disciplined unit. He stationed only a small contingent within Rome itself, with the majority quartered in various Italian towns, ostensibly to reduce their political influence and prevent them from becoming too powerful a presence within the capital. Yet, even with these precautions, their unique position as the emperor's personal retinue, combined with their superior pay, privileges, and easier service conditions compared to regular legionaries, quickly imbued them with a sense of immense self-importance and an acute awareness of their own power. They were an army within the city, a permanent fixture at the heart of Roman rule, and their presence alone was a constant reminder of the military might that propped up the imperial throne. The Guard's initial role was indeed to protect the emperor, ensuring his personal safety and serving as a crucial reserve force in times of crisis. They accompanied the emperor on campaigns, patrolled the imperial palace, and maintained order within Rome. Their discipline and fighting prowess were renowned, and they were often deployed as shock troops in critical battles. However, their physical proximity to the emperor, their control over access to him, and their sheer military strength within the city gradually transformed them from loyal protectors into kingmakers. By the 1st century CE, particularly after the reign of Augustus, they became increasingly aware of their ability to influence imperial succession. They could intimidate the Senate, force the enthronement of preferred candidates, and more chillingly, depose and assassinate emperors who displeased them or failed to meet their demands for higher donatives, financial gifts bestowed upon them by a new emperor. Emperors like Caligula, Nero, and Galba all met their end at the hands of the very Guard sworn to protect them, a gruesome testament to the Guard's evolving role from guardians to active political assassins. The infamous Praetorian barracks, the Castra Praetoria, solidified their power base within Rome. Built outside the official city limits by Emperor Tiberius in 23 CE, this massive fortified camp housed thousands of Praetorians and their auxiliaries, making them a formidable military presence at the very gates of the capital. From this stronghold, they could effectively control the city, project their will, and intervene directly in imperial politics. The commanders of the guard, the Praetorian prefects, often wielded immense power, sometimes even eclipsing the emperor himself. Figures like Sejanus, Tiberius's prefect, or Tigellinus, Nero's prefect, became highly influential political players, capable of manipulating events, fabricating conspiracies, and orchestrating assassinations to further their own ambitions. This concentration of military power, combined with their privileged status and corruptible nature, transformed the Guard into a constant source of instability, a volatile force that could turn Rome into a dangerous chessboard of ambition and betrayal. The complex legacy of the Praetorian Guard is perhaps best illustrated by the Year of the Four Emperors in 69 CE, a tumultuous period where the Guard openly auctioned off the emperorship to the highest bidder. After the assassination of Galba, the Praetorians proclaimed Otho as emperor in exchange for a massive donative. When Otho was defeated by Vitellius, the Guard quickly switched allegiance, pledging loyalty to Vitellius, only to abandon him when Vespasian emerged as a stronger contender. This chaotic spectacle of imperial succession being dictated by the Guard's greed and shifting loyalties profoundly damaged the stability and legitimacy of the Roman Empire, showcasing their immense yet destructive power. The Roman mosaics and sculptures that depict Praetorians, often showing them in their distinctive tunics and cloaks, with their swords and spears, belie the profound political intrigue and violence that often characterized their actual role, portraying them as loyal servants while their historical actions were far more complex and often treacherous. The Praetorian Guard, a force that had been both a shield and a sword for the Roman emperors, eventually met its own demise. Their ultimate disbandment came at the hands of Emperor Constantine the Great in 312 CE. Following his decisive victory over Maxentius at the Battle of the Milvian Bridge, Constantine, who had witnessed the Guard's corruption and perfidy firsthand, recognized that their continued existence posed an unacceptable threat to imperial stability. He dissolved the Praetorian Guard, destroyed their barracks, and dispersed their remaining members into various frontier legions, stripping them of their privileged status and their political power. This act marked the end of an era, removing a unique and often dangerous element from the heart of Roman imperial politics. Their story remains a compelling cautionary tale about unchecked military power and the corrupting influence of privilege, forever etched in history as the enigmatic elite who both guarded and governed the fate of the Roman Empire, their very existence a constant reminder of the blurred lines between protection and usurpation. From the politically charged atmosphere surrounding the Praetorian Guard, a force that wielded immense temporal power, we now turn to a different kind of elite order, one that uniquely blended spiritual devotion with martial might, the Knights Hospitaller. This medieval military order, emerging from the fervent crucible of the Crusades, truly lived a dual identity, serving simultaneously as compassionate caregivers and formidable holy warriors. Their legend, far from being a simple tale of combat, is a profound narrative of selfless service intertwined with fierce defense, embodying a unique blend of piety, medical foresight, and strategic military prowess that set them apart from all other martial organizations of their time. The origins of the Knights Hospitaller, formerly known as the Order of the Hospital of St. John of Jerusalem, are deeply rooted in the practical necessities of pilgrimage to the Holy Land. Even before the First Crusade in the late 11th century, a group of Amalfitan merchants established a hospital in Jerusalem to care for sick and impoverished Christian pilgrims. This foundational act of charity set the tone for their dual mission. Following the successful capture of Jerusalem by Christian forces in 1099, the hospital thrived and its staff, composed of devout lay brothers, expanded their operations. As more pilgrims flocked to the newly conquered Holy Land, the need for both medical care and protection became increasingly pressing. By the early 12th century, under the leadership of figures like Blessed Gerard Tom, the hospital formalized its structure and received official recognition from the papacy. The brothers took traditional monastic vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, but their unique calling was to serve the Lord's poor and sick, particularly pilgrims. This initial focus on healing and hospitality defined their spiritual commitment, making them a beacon of hope and solace in a dangerous and unfamiliar world. However, the volatile political landscape of the Crusader states, constantly threatened by hostile Muslim forces, soon necessitated a dramatic transformation. The routes to Jerusalem remained perilous, and the hospital's patients, often wounded or ailing pilgrims, were vulnerable. To protect these vulnerable individuals and their own establishments, the Hospitaller brothers began to take up arms. By the mid-12th century, they had effectively morphed into a military order, authorized by the Pope to defend the Holy Land and its pilgrims. This transition was gradual but profound, shifting their identity from purely charitable to a hybrid of monastic and military. They adopted a distinctive black mantle with a white 8-pointed cross, symbolizing the 8 Beatitudes and the 8 aspirations of the knights. This white cross soon became a fearsome emblem on the battlefield, signifying both unwavering religious devotion and formidable martial skill. They constructed massive fortifications across the Crusader states, including the formidable Crac des Chevaliers in modern-day Syria, one of the most impressive castles of the Middle Ages, which served as both a strategic defensive stronghold and a testament to their engineering prowess. As a military force, the Knights Hospitaller were renowned for their discipline, courage, and their willingness to fight to the death, often alongside the Knights Templar, their frequent rivals and sometime allies. They formed the elite shock troops of the Crusader armies, particularly effective in holding critical strategic points or leading daring charges. Their training was rigorous, their armor heavy, and their commitment to their vows made them formidable opponents. They participated in virtually every major battle of the Crusades, from the Siege of Ascalon to the Battle of Hattin, where they suffered immense losses, demonstrating their unwavering refusal to retreat. Yet, even amidst their military duties, they never abandoned their foundational commitment to healing. Their hospitals remained active, continuing to care for the sick and wounded, whether Christian, Muslim, or Jewish, setting them apart from other military orders. This dual identity, fierce warriors on the battlefield, compassionate healers in their hospitals, was unique and underscored a profound philosophical approach to their holy mission. Following the eventual fall of the Crusader states in the late 13th century, the Knights Hospitaller, unlike the Templars whose suppression we've discussed, managed to adapt and endure. They strategically relocated their base of operations, transforming into a naval power to continue their fight against the Ottoman Empire and piracy in the Mediterranean. Their first major stronghold after the Holy Land was the island of Rhodes, which they successfully conquered in 1310. For over 2 centuries, they ruled Rhodes as an independent sovereign state, fortifying it into an impregnable fortress that withstood numerous sieges by the Ottomans. Their maritime prowess grew, and their fleet became a significant force in the Mediterranean, protecting Christian shipping and engaging in naval warfare. This period showcased their remarkable adaptability, transforming from land-based crusaders into a formidable maritime power, demonstrating their strategic foresight and their capacity for evolution. However, even Rhodes eventually succumbed. After a prolonged and brutal siege in 1522, which they bravely defended against overwhelming Ottoman forces, the knights were finally forced to abandon the island. Undeterred, they found a new home in 1530, granted to them by Emperor Charles V, the island of Malta. Here, they once again transformed their new homeland into an invincible bastion of Christendom. Their greatest challenge came in 1565 with the Great Siege of Malta, where a massive Ottoman army and fleet laid siege to the island for over 4 months. The Knights Hospitaller, though vastly outnumbered, defended Malta with legendary courage and tenacity, ultimately repelling the Ottoman invasion, a pivotal victory that checked Ottoman expansion in the Western Mediterranean. The heroic defense of Malta further cemented their legendary status as unwavering defenders of the faith and masters of siege warfare, building upon their existing reputation from their time in the Holy Land and roads. The myth of the Knights Hospitalier combines piety with martial prowess, a blend that continues to captivate imaginations. They were seen as embodiments of Christian charity and martial virtue, simultaneously tending to the suffering and waging relentless war. Their distinctive eight-pointed cross remains a powerful symbol of their enduring legacy, recognized globally as a mark of medical aid and humanitarian service. Historical records, including chronicles and archaeological evidence from their hospitals and fortresses in places like Jerusalem, Acre, Rhodes, and Malta, vividly illustrate their strategic importance and their commitment to both their military and medical roles. Even today, their modern successors, the Sovereign Military Order of Malta and the Venerable Order of St. John, continue their charitable work, a testament to the enduring power of their foundational mission. The Knights Hospitalier stand as a unique example of warriors who fought not just with steel, but with compassion, forever embodying the complex, often paradoxical, ideal of the sacred defender. From the Knights Hospitalier who fought for faith and healing, we now circle back to a force of nature so immense that it transcends individual heroes and embodies the very concept of an unstoppable wave, the Mongol horde. While we've touched upon Genghis Khan's strategic genius, it is the collective myth of the Mongol horde that truly represents an enigma of scale and psychological impact. This wasn't merely an army, it was perceived as a living, devouring entity, sweeping across continents with a speed and ferocity that left terrified populations bewildered and decimated. For centuries, the name Mongol became synonymous with overwhelming, inevitable destruction, a testament to how effectively their reputation was cultivated by both their own strategic brilliance and the sheer terror they inspired in their enemies. The sheer psychological impact of the Mongol horde was arguably as devastating as their physical conquests. Their lightning-fast appearance, often seemingly out of nowhere before carefully prepared defenses could be mustered, created a sense of utter inevitability. News of their approach often preceded them, carried by terrified refugees and the smoke of burning cities. This created a ripple effect of panic that softened targets long before the Mongols even arrived. Cities and empires, accustomed to prolonged sieges and conventional warfare, found themselves facing an enemy that ignored established rules, bypassed fortifications with astonishing ease, and seemed to materialize everywhere at once. The meticulous Mongol intelligence network, coupled with deliberate acts of brutality, often exaggerated in later accounts by their enemies, served to amplify this fear. Massacres were not just acts of vengeance, they were calculated demonstrations of power, serving as a chilling deterrent for future resistance, ensuring that word of their ruthlessness spread like wildfire. This manufactured terror often led to surrenders without a fight, saving Mongol lives and resources and amplifying their reputation for invincibility. At the heart of the Mongol horde's success was a military structure that, while seemingly decentralized, was incredibly effective and innovative for its time. Unlike traditional armies that relied on cumbersome logistics, the Mongols were a highly mobile fighting machine. Their cavalry, primarily light horse archers, could cover vast distances at incredible speeds, often riding multiple ponies in relays. This mobility allowed them to bypass stronger fortifications, appear where least expected, and quickly encircle larger, slower-moving enemy forces. Their command structure, formalized by Genghis Khan, was based on a decimal system, organizing units into tens, hundreds, thousands, tumens, and tens of thousands, ensuring clear lines of command and rapid communication across enormous distances. This structure, combined with rigorous discipline and extensive training, allowed for complex maneuvers, feigned retreats, and coordinated attacks that bewildered and overwhelmed their adversaries. The efficiency with which they could mobilize, campaign, and supply themselves across diverse terrains, from the icy plains of Russia to the deserts of Persia, was unparalleled. The very concept of the horde, a term that suggests an uncontrolled, swarming mass, belies the extraordinary level of organization and strategic planning that underpinned Mongol campaigns. While they might have appeared as an uncontrolled deluge to their enemies, every movement was meticulously planned, every siege executed with chilling precision. They were masters of siege warfare, quickly adapting and adopting technologies from conquered peoples. They built siege engines on demand, diverted rivers, and employed engineers and specialists from captured cities to break down seemingly impregnable walls. Their ability to gather vast amounts of information through their extensive spy networks and their use of psychological warfare meant they rarely entered a battle without a clear understanding of their enemy's strengths and weaknesses. This sophisticated approach, blending traditional nomadic mobility with advanced strategic planning, transformed them from a collection of tribes into an empire-forging force, constantly adapting and leveraging their opponents' fears against them. The widespread fear the Mongols instilled across Eurasia created a fertile ground for their legend to grow, often blurring the lines between reality and myth. In Europe, they were seen as the devil's horsemen, a divine punishment. In the Islamic world, they were remembered as a cataclysmic force that swept away ancient caliphates. These narratives, while born of terror and suffering, inadvertently contributed to their enduring image as an unstoppable force of nature, almost supernatural in their destructive power. Historical maps of their conquests vividly illustrate the breathtaking speed and scale of their expansion, with their empire stretching from Eastern Europe to the Pacific Ocean, a testament to their unparalleled military might and strategic dominance. Even today, the phrase Mongol horde evokes an image of overwhelming power and relentless advance, underscoring how effectively their historical reality was transmuted into a timeless, terrifying legend, forever etched into the collective memory as the ultimate, unstoppable wave of conquest. From the overwhelming impact of the Mongol horde, a collective force that reshaped empires, we now narrow our focus to a powerful, yet often tragic, individual figure from feudal Japan, the Ronin. His very existence defied the rigid hierarchy of the samurai class, a warrior without a master, adrift in a society where loyalty and service to a lord were the very cornerstones of identity and honor. The enigma of the Ronin lies in this profound contradiction. A masterless samurai, simultaneously revered for his independence and condemned as an outcast, embodying themes of freedom, despair, and an often violent search for purpose in a world that had abandoned him. The societal implications of being a Ronin in feudal Japan were immense and often dire. In a highly stratified society where one's status, livelihood, and even identity were inextricably linked to service to a feudal lord, a samurai without a master was an anomaly, a man stripped of his purpose and his place. A samurai might become a Ronin for various reasons. His lord might have been defeated in battle, his domain confiscated, or he might have been formally dismissed for various offenses. Regardless of the cause, the result was a profound social and economic dislocation. Without a stipend or a place to belong, a Ronin often faced poverty, starvation, and a struggle for survival. He was denied the formal protections and social standing of a samurai, yet was still bound by the samurai code of honor, Bushido, even as society denied him the means to uphold it. This paradoxical existence forced many Ronin into desperate measures, becoming bodyguards, mercenaries, or even bandits, blurring the lines between honorable warrior and dangerous outcast. The challenges faced by a Ronin were not just material, they were deeply psychological. To be a samurai meant to serve, to have a clear purpose, and to be part of a larger clan structure. Losing one's master meant losing one's reason for being, leading to profound existential crises, guilt, and a constant search for new employment, often under humiliating conditions. Many Ronin wandered from province to province, seeking a new lord to serve, offering their skills for hire, or engaging in duels to prove their worth. The insecurity and lack of fixed abode contributed to their image as dangerous wanderers, men who had nothing left to lose and were therefore unpredictable. Yet, this very independence, this freedom from strictures of a lord, also gave them a unique perspective, often making them more pragmatic and adaptable than their still-serving counterparts, capable of seeing situations from an unconventional angle, untainted by rigid loyalty or political maneuvering. Despite the hardships, the Ronin quickly became a romanticized figure in popular culture, embodying themes of individual freedom and a defiant spirit. Woodblock prints from the Edo period often depict them as stoic, solitary figures, cloaked in straw hats and traditional attire, their two swords, the katana and wakizashi, their only companions. This image of the wandering swordsman, beholden to no one, navigating a corrupt world with only his skill and honor, resonated deeply with the common people. The popularity of works like Musashi by Eiji Yoshikawa, based on the real-life Miyamoto Musashi, further cemented this romantic image, portraying the Ronin as a solitary seeker of martial perfection and spiritual enlightenment, outside the confines of rigid social structures. Filmmakers like Akira Kurosawa, through masterpieces such as Seven Samurai and Yojimbo, vividly brought the Ronin to life on screen, depicting them as cunning, resourceful, and often morally ambiguous heroes who used their skills to protect the innocent or right wrongs, even if it meant operating outside the law. The most famous story of the Ronin, and one that perfectly encapsulates their unique blend of loyalty, revenge, and tragic honor, is that of the 47 Ronin. In the early 18th century, a group of samurai were left masterless when their lord, Asano Naganori, was forced to commit seppuku after assaulting a corrupt court official, Kira Yoshinaka, who had insulted him. Legally, the samurai were now Ronin, forbidden from seeking revenge. However, for over a year, these 47 former retainers patiently plotted their vengeance. They dispersed, taking on humble jobs, some even feigning moral decay, all to lull Kira into a false sense of security. Finally, on a snowy night, they launched a meticulously planned raid on Kira's mansion, killed him, and then, after bringing his head to their lord's grave, all 47 committed seppuku themselves. This act, while technically illegal, was seen as the ultimate manifestation of samurai honor and loyalty, inspiring awe and profound respect. The story of the 47 Ronin became a foundational myth in Japanese culture, embodying the pinnacle of loyalty and self-sacrifice, even in the face of death and societal condemnation. It showcased that true honor transcended formal status and that a clear conscience and loyalty to one's principles could elevate even a masterless warrior to legendary status. Their story became a subject of countless plays, novels, and films, ensuring its enduring appeal. The Ronin, whether the historical figures struggling for survival or the romanticized wandering heroes of fiction, remain powerful symbols of freedom, individual morality, and the profound quest for purpose beyond the strictures of society. They are a testament to the enduring human spirit that seeks to define its own path, even when cast adrift, proving that true heroism can emerge from the most unlikely and challenging of circumstances. And there you have it, an extraordinary journey through the ages, exploring the 30 enigmatic myths of timeless warriors who continue to fascinate and inspire us. From the legendary King Arthur, whose very existence challenges the boundaries of historical verification, to the formidable Gurkhas, whose living legend is forged in acts of unparalleled bravery on modern battlefields, these stories blur the lines between history and folklore, between fact and the profound power of human imagination. We've traversed continents and centuries, encountering figures whose deeds were so grand, so filled with awe and terror, that their true lives became intertwined with the aspirations and fears of entire civilizations. What powerful, unseen threads connect these diverse legends across such varied cultures and vast stretches of time? Perhaps it's the universal human desire to believe in heroes, to find strength and solace in tales of triumph against impossible odds. Whether it's the strategic brilliance of Zhuge Liang winning battles with his mind, or the raw, unbridled fury of the Viking berserkers, embodying a primal force of nature, each warrior, in their unique way, pushed the boundaries of human capability and left an indelible mark on the collective consciousness. Their myths serve as a mirror, reflecting our own enduring fascination with courage, sacrifice, and the eternal struggle between good and evil, order and chaos. They show us that while the weapons and battlefields may change, the human spirit's capacity for extraordinary valor remains a constant, echoing across history. Each of these warriors, whether a historical figure whose life was magnified by legend, or a purely mythical construct born from a society's deepest yearnings, tells us something fundamental about ourselves. They represent our striving for justice, like Robin Hood challenging tyranny from the greenwood, or our quest for freedom, as embodied by Spartacus rising from the chains of slavery. They speak to our need for protection, like the loyal Varangian guard securing the Byzantine emperor, or our reverence for tradition and discipline, as seen in the layered history of the Bushido Code. And they symbolize the terrifying might of overwhelming force, like the devastating sweep of the Mongol horde, or the awe-inspiring charge of the winged hussars, feathered guardians of European Christendom. These aren't just figures from dusty history books, they are archetypes, living symbols embedded deep within our cultural narratives. So, as we conclude this epic exploration, we invite you to reflect on your own journey through these captivating tales. Which warrior myth resonated with you the most, sparking your imagination or stirring a sense of wonder? Was it the unwavering determination of Joan of Arc, guided by divine voices, or the tragic defiance of Boudica, fighting for her land and her people? Perhaps it was the complex honor of El Cid, navigating a world of shifting loyalties, or the solitary quest for perfection of Miyamoto Musashi. We love hearing your thoughts and diving deeper into these mysteries with you. Share your insights, your favorite legends, and what these timeless warriors mean to you in the comments below. Your engagement fuels our quest for more untold stories from the mysterious corners of history. And if you've enjoyed this deep dive into the lives and legends of these enigmatic figures, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel for more journeys into the remarkable past, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next adventure. From the enduring spirit of these legendary warriors, we now turn our gaze inward, exploring a dimension arguably as crucial to the samurai's mystique as his sword, his spirituality. More specifically, we'll delve into the profound and often romanticized influence of Zen Buddhism on the samurai's philosophy and training, a connection that has shaped our modern understanding of these iconic warriors. The popular image of the samurai isn't just one of martial prowess, but also of stoic discipline, inner calm, and a profound connection to a spiritual path. But to what extent was this spiritual depth a widespread reality among all samurai, and how much of it is an idealized component of the Bushido myth, particularly articulated in later periods of peace? The relationship between Zen Buddhism and the samurai began to deepen significantly during the Kamakura period, starting in the late 12th century. Zen, with its emphasis on meditation, direct experience, and self-discipline, found fertile ground among the warrior class. Unlike other forms of Buddhism that focused on extensive scriptural study or elaborate rituals, Zen offered a path to enlightenment through direct, intuitive understanding, a concept that appealed to the pragmatic and action-oriented samurai. The practice of zazen, or seated meditation, became a tool for cultivating focus, clarity, and emotional control, qualities highly valued on the battlefield. For a samurai facing imminent death, Zen offered a way to transcend fear and embrace the present moment, finding peace amidst chaos. This resonated deeply with a warrior's existence, where life was fleeting and death an ever-present companion. Prominent Zen monasteries and their abbots often served as spiritual advisors to powerful samurai lords, further cementing this connection and integrating Zen principles into the warrior way of life. A core concept born from this spiritual intersection was mushin, often translated as no mind or empty mind. In the context of combat, mushin refers to a state of heightened awareness where the mind is free from conscious thought, emotion, and deliberation. It means reacting instinctively without hesitation or attachment, allowing the body to move freely and efficiently in response to an adversary's actions. This wasn't about thoughtlessness, but about transcending conventional thinking to achieve a state of pure, intuitive action. For a samurai, achieving mushin in a duel or battle was believed to be paramount. It allowed him to move with fluid grace, anticipate his opponent's moves, and strike with perfect timing, unburdened by fear, anger, or doubt. Achieving this state required rigorous meditation, constant practice, and a deep understanding of one's own mind and body. It was the ultimate expression of control, not just over one's opponent, but over oneself, creating a profound link between inner calm and outer effectiveness. Beyond direct combat, Zen principles permeated various aspects of samurai life and training, fostering a holistic approach to their existence. The tea ceremony, with its meditative simplicity and emphasis on present-moment awareness, offered a path to inner tranquility. Calligraphy and ink painting, practiced by many samurai, were not merely artistic pursuits but exercises in concentration and discipline, seeking to capture the essence of a subject with minimal strokes, mirroring the directness of a sword thrust. Archery, too, was infused with Zen philosophy, where the focus was not just on hitting the target, but on achieving perfect form and a state of unity with the bow, arrow, and target, embodying the concept that the mind was the ultimate weapon. These practices, once seen by some as mere hobbies, were integral to the samurai's pursuit of self-mastery, cultivating the mental and spiritual resilience needed to navigate a life of constant peril. Visuals of serene Zen gardens, with their raked sand and carefully placed rocks, provide a tangible representation of the tranquility and contemplative spirit that samurai sought to cultivate amidst the chaos of their lives. However, it is crucial to recognize that the widespread spiritual depth attributed to all samurai and the seamless integration of Zen into every aspect of their lives is often an idealized component of the Bushido myth, particularly as it was codified during the Edo period. While many prominent samurai undoubtedly practiced Zen and were deeply influenced by its teachings, not all samurai were Zen masters or philosophers. For the vast majority, Bushido was a practical guide for loyal service and martial effectiveness, and their spirituality might have been a blend of various Buddhist sects, Shinto beliefs, and folk superstitions, reflecting the diverse religious landscape of Japan. The romanticized image of the Zen samurai was actively cultivated in later periods, particularly when the warrior class sought to redefine its purpose during long periods of peace, elevating their martial role into a more profound philosophical and spiritual path. This emphasis served to legitimize their continued existence as a ruling class, even when their primary function as warriors was diminished. Nonetheless, the enduring connection between Zen and the blade, between meditation and martial arts, profoundly shaped the legacy of the samurai. It gave their martial prowess a deeper philosophical dimension, transforming them from mere soldiers into spiritual warriors seeking enlightenment through discipline and conflict. This powerful blend continues to captivate imaginations globally, influencing various martial arts disciplines and even modern mindfulness practices. The notion that true strength comes not just from physical power, but from an unshakable inner calm and clarity of mind, is a timeless lesson that the samurai, through the lens of Zen, exemplified. It invites us to consider how inner work can elevate outer performance, and how even the most violent of pursuits can be imbued with a quest for profound self-understanding.